Welcome back. Amazing lunch. Hopefully, you guys at home had like Uber on delivery. So we couldn't do that for you. So if you're not here, you missed it. Missed a good lunch. So just for this afternoon, just to give you guys some logistics. For the virtual audience, we're going to be back and forth showing you all the stages of presentations. However, you might miss the questions and answers. If you have questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we'll have all of our speakers get on there. I'm actually employing them with that task now. They'll come back and answer your questions. So on this stage, we're going to have Alan Yeager. I just met him in person, and I seen him like once a long time ago. Then COVID happened, and we looked behind screens, right? Alan Yeager is a Naval X Tech Bridge director for Ventura Tech Bridge, and he's all the way out here to give us his wonderful presentation. So welcome, Alan, to the stage. Woo-hoo!
Is that better? No? Okay, so I guess I'm done. Okay, hopefully that works. No? Should I just hold it? Okay, there we go. And Ashley, it's great to meet you in person also. Thank you. So Alan Yeager from the Ventura Tech Bridge, also here with my sort of Tech Bridge directors. We call ourselves the Coco team, but Candy Carr back there trying to ignore me, and Mark Thompson. So anyway, from the Ventura Tech Bridge, let's see, am failing miserably. Turning it on helps. There we go. Okay, so that doesn't show up super well, but just kind of by way of introduction and kind of where we're at. So from the Ventura Tech Bridge, which is way down here in Southern California, kind of partnering myself. I'm from the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Port Hueneme Division, but we're kind of very fortunate in that area to have both NAVFAC, XWIC, Mark, and NOC, WD, Weapons Division, Candy. So kind of having three warfare centers co-located, one Tech Bridge area. And then as we kind of talk about ANTX and Coastal Trident, I think that'll help just from a perspective-wise that we do have three significant warfare centers, three R&D labs co-located in this area. Okay, so you've seen this before. This is the Naval X Innovation Pipeline. I put that up there because I want to kind of highlight where we're at, what we're doing, and when we talk about ANTX is Advanced Naval Technology Exercise, and Coastal Trident, kind of where that fits within this innovation pipeline, within our innovation ecosystem. Like a lot of the other tech bridges, right, we're very focused on seeing capabilities get through this pipeline, accelerating these capabilities to the fleet and the warfighter. And so we've built, like most of the other regions have, kind of this network of our PIA partners, our nonprofits, our small business advocates, as well as our industry partners. And so being able to put those together and then you can kind of see how they fit within our pipeline and where we are. Just not doing well here. Perfect. Okay. I don't know if I did that or you did, Ling, but it worked. So we're going to be talking about this idea of validating, right? And so when we have these capabilities, we can source wide, we can curate, right? We can find these ideas, we can work with our partners, we can incubate these ideas. In our tech bridge, FathomWorks, it looks very similar to kind of like the makerspace on the other side here, where we can actually prototype, get to this minimum viable kind of product concept area, and then really kind of focus on using ANTX as an operationally inspired venue to really get out, put the equipment, put the capability, put the technology out on the war fighters' hands, kind of in an operationally inspired maritime port environment, which of course is relevant to us as a Navy on the Naval Surface Warfare Center specifically. So we have partnered with our PIA and our 501c3 partners to combine both an Antex, which is the Advanced Naval Technology Exercise, with a long-running program called Coastal Trident. Coastal Trident is on its 15th year, and it's really a regional program focused on port and maritime safety and security. So bringing in kind of this whole of government approach, leveraging the venue for exercises, for training, for technology evaluation, which made a lot of sense for us to then kind of incorporate in from a warfare center perspective, from a Navy perspective, on how do we leverage that without having to duplicate it, both kind of cost savings, planning efforts, things like that, being able to really integrate those efforts. It's an ongoing iterative program. And so for us, we are down here on the far right, where we've just kind of finished. In fact, today, they're finishing their last at-sea experimentation out on the Navy Sea Test Range with our Point Magoo partners. And then all of that will come together into our Tech Expo, which is next week. So if you happen to find yourself out on the West Coast, we hope to see you there. And let's see. Next slide. Okay, so let me jump a little bit to kind of what an Antex is. Some of you probably are familiar with that term. Some of you aren't. I've kind of talked a little bit about the Ventura Tech Bridge, Coastal Trident, but I'm going to kind of jump back now into kind of specifically what is Antex. And so this was really the warfare centers. I think, each kind of NAVC, NAVAIR, NIWC all kind of came to this about the same time. I think Newport actually was kind of the first one to coin the term, but really as a venue to take this idea of, hey, we're spending some significant funding doing research and development, particularly 219, Section 219, NICE funding. You've heard that term before. Getting it out of the lab, getting it into an operationally inspired environment, really kind of learning how it works. So this idea of demonstrations, kind of this kind of key performance characteristics. What do we care about? What's interesting? Learn fast. Learn that maybe something doesn't work, so let's abandon that idea. Learn that something, hey, this does have promise. If we could only tweak it this way, or if we could change it this way. So a good venue to be able to collaborate kind of across the warfare centers, across public, private, academia, et cetera, coming together. And so it's been formalized over the years, and now NAVC actually kind of has a memo defining what it is and what it's for. And let's see if I can get to the next slide. There we go. This is a much better graphic from where I'm sitting and probably where you guys are. This is kind of the pipeline, and I'm going to try and talk through it so you can help see it. But really, we've seen versions of this. It's the funnel, it's the innovation pipeline, but this idea that we can source things from a wide area, from kind of any TRL level, be it the warfare centers, different universities, industry, being able to kind of look wide, find where that fits within our requirements. Ours being, if I'm representing the Surface Warfare Center Port Hueneme Division, maybe we're looking at, maintenance, augmented reality for maintenance, tech support, things like that fit within an ISCA type of focus area. But, what are those overlaps with NOC-WD? What's those overlaps with, other warfare centers? Being able to kind of look wide. I think, Dr. Carlin had mentioned this morning, being able to kind of source things from a wide perspective and see where those similarities are. We may call it and think of it one way, another, warfare center or lab thinks of it a different way, but if we can kind of find those and bring those in. So that's kind of the idea of this. And then you kind of neck it down, right? As you get to this idea where we can kind of get to this minimum viable product, we can get it out into an operational environment, be that an exercise, be that a fleet exercise, a GIFIX, which is done by the Naval Postgraduate School, Trident Spectre, right? There's a whole bunch of different programs that ultimately get to it. And hopefully we get it out to a point where it becomes something that's useful. And we've seen that acceleration. We've supported that capability development through the process, and we ultimately get to, a viable product. Is it a question, or are you just waving? Okay, sorry. Sorry, this is a little bit hard to see. But again, kind of early I like I like the term inform, because a lot of times, right, we've heard kind of fail fast, learn. We will say within sort of our own community, right, it's okay to realize something didn't work, or it wasn't what we thought it was going to be, right? Because that does inform us. That informs us as a command, that informs us as a Navy to understand, okay, we thought we had this route. We were able to quickly get it out, get it into a port or maritime environment, learn that maybe that didn't work or we need to tweak it. That's okay, right? That's part of that informing process that we see as we go through this. Another great slide from up here that doesn't look good from your side. So this is kind of just the variety of different Antex programs. So I mentioned, Keyport has partnered with us. Newport has done their own. Rick Tarr, somewhere around here, has they do an Antex event. NIWC-LANT does an Antex event. So we can see all these different events that happen. The red is kind of the one that we're talking about, Coastal Trident. In a perfect world, and what we're trying to get to is aligning these. Not that we need to be doing one event, but that what we're doing informs the next iteration of this, and that companies and labs that are participating in these types of programs can understand, hey, maybe if I want to do something down in Key West, or I need that type of environment, I can go work with the tech bridge down there. Or if I want to be out on the sea test range, right, there's value there. Or maybe I want to be up in the Pacific Northwest. That we do within the Navy side and with the Antex sides really have aligned kind of what we're doing, both in schedule as well as effort, because there's value in the different locations and the different venues that these Antex events are taking place in. These are really bad slides. We have this year we have over 55 different projects that have participated in the Coastal Trident Antex event. I say Coastal Trident Antex, we kind of use that term both ways, right? The Coastal Trident part is the part that our PIA partners are doing. And so that would be the exercise that involves, first responders, fire, Coast Guard, kind of our partners, our maritime partners. And then there will be the ones that are specific Navy entities, which we kind of put under the Antex umbrella. So I use the term Antex Coastal Trident kind of interchangeably, but it is kind of the Antex part is the Navy entities within the larger Coastal Trident program. So within that larger program, we have 55 different experiments, and we break those down into modules. But you can kind of see it's port, maritime response, critical infrastructure, a lot of unmanned systems, unmanned counter unmanned systems. A lot of effort on, hey, we know that for the last X number of years, we've been really kind of focused on counter unmanned systems in kind of a deployed configuration. Now bringing that capability into a port and maritime, putting and seeing those capabilities on a ship. A lot of effort this year kind of focused on the shipboard applications of unmanned systems. Moving kind of into this domain awareness, and then finally into this idea of maintenance and sustainability. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we go into next year, is looking at these tools that maybe industry's using, industry's available, from augmented reality, virtual reality, distance support, right? We think of like telemedicine, but how can we do that to support our ships? And so that's one from a T2 side. We're really excited to kind of see that coming around and maturing and hopefully continuing to grow into next year. Happy to kind of go through these offline with anyone that's interested, but the point being is it's a little bit different than some of the other Antex and experiments that you may have seen or participated in. We really kind of group these in modules that make sense, and then we spread it out over about a 3-month period of time. So instead of trying to do everything in one experiment kind of within a week or something, we're able to really leverage the venue in order to meet the goals and objectives of the experiment, be able to sort of align expectations, share the information we've learned, kind of roll that into the next iteration. So our Antex event really kind of starts in the June timeframe, and really, like I said, they're ending up, and then we'll come together next week as kind of the final venue for that. If you're familiar with the Southern California area, so we're fortunate in the Ventura area. Like I said, we have NOC WD Weapons Division, both Point Mugu and China Lake. We have NAVFAC Exwick, as well as NAVC Port Hueneme, kind of co-located. But within that area, we not only have sort of the full range assets, we have restricted and warning airspace, sea space. We have a number of different operational vessels. We have the self-defense test ship, which is the Navy's remote-controlled Spruance class destroyer. We have offshore platforms. So we have a lot of infrastructure around the port and maritime domain that support experimentation, development, kind of testing, etc. But then you can see we really operate all the way down, kind of in partnership with our friends down in San Diego. The Keyport Ballast Point facilities, a unique asset down there in San Diego. Really kind of up through in the Inland Empire, Troy and his team. And then up, just a little bit north would be Monterey and the tech bridge up there. But some really kind of unique geographic infrastructure. I call it kind of the ideal playground, right? That we can really, when we talk about accelerating capabilities and being able to have the venue and the environment in order to do this, it's pretty unique. I know, there's other spaces around the country that support this kind of stuff, but if you haven't familiarized yourself sort of what's down in the Southern California area, it's great. And it's like I said, for 15 years, it's been very supportive, and the community has been very supportive of this kind of sort of exercising, experimentation, testing, and evaluation. One more, Ling. There we go. So just a couple pictures from sort of the highlights over the last couple of months. You can see we've been everywhere from Atlas, which is a range ship, platform Gina, offshore platform we can use. We can experiment, put testing and sensors on. The Motor Vessel Independence, which is a NAVFAC Exwick test ship we can utilize. That's where they're out today. Working with the dive team, the Navy dive, as well as the DHS and kind of first responders. Various different unmanned aircraft, counter unmanned systems, as well as kind of Navy and first responders, kind of traditionally in that port and maritime environment, looking at that tech transition, tech transfer aspects of that. The more that we can recognize that, hey, it may have a Navy application, but we're not the only entity that's using technology in a port and maritime environment. Ultimately, the commercial value of that becomes more beneficial to the Navy if it has a dual use capability. And so getting that and getting those kind of communities together early on for the development of the technology, I think, not only benefits us as a Navy consumer someday, but, obviously the larger maritime community also. So just a couple different highlights. Realize those are probably pretty hard to see for those in the audience. And then finally, this is my last slide, kind of ending it with a plug for next week. So while we're out all over the Southern California area for a couple of months doing experimentation, bringing everybody kind of back together physically will be the first time for a year, inviting sort of all those companies and entities and labs that have experimented, bring them all together, put them in the same room, kind of help facilitate some of that discussion, lessons learned, collaboration, what worked, what didn't work. So that's our plan for next week. We'll be day one is virtual. That'll be on September 22nd. You're welcome to, anybody's welcome to sort of log in. We have kind of a formal program. We kind of go through requirements at a high level, what we're trying to do, representation from a variety of different Navy labs and warfare centers, kind of recapping the events, what was learned. And then day two on the 23rd will be at the FathomWorks facility, which is where the Ventura Tech Bridge is. And we'll have both kind of static displays as well as some demos out in the port environment. So again, kind of an idea. It's the ending of this year's program, but also kind of kickstarts next year, because then we'll go right into kind of the October timeframe. We'll do a concept development meeting, so it's still fresh on everybody's heads. Hey, what did we do? What did we learn? What worked? What didn't work? Now let's kind of figure out what we want to do for next year. So again, hopefully virtually in person, if you guys are interested. Hope to see you there. With that, that's all I have. I was hoping we'd get some questions or discussions. Yes, sir. No purchase necessary, but day one. Right. So day one is virtual. and there'll be a Zoom link. And so if you go to antex.org, you can register, and then we'll send you the link, and you can participate virtually. Yes, sir. Sure. Let me try and answer that, Rick, and then tell me if I didn't get it right. So the idea is to make this as low of a barrier to entry as possible. The Naval Surface Warfare Center, Port Hueneme Division, kind of funds the ANTX part of it. So that's the organization of it, and then sort of availability on some of the resources. And so, being out on the Motor Vessel Independence, a couple days on the sea test range, right? We kind of foot that bill because we see the value in being able to kind of align some of our priorities to that, but we make that available to any other entity, program office, industry partner, university, whatever that may be, right? If they can sort of parallel in and make use of the venue that we're already providing, then we highly encourage that. And so our goal is to make it as no cost as possible. If a company were to come in and say, hey, I need a dedicated, day at sea on such and such kind of boat, and we're not doing that already, then we need to be able to kind of figure out how to recover those costs. But that's part of what we do in October with our concept development meeting. Is basically, hey, anybody, everyone, come in, kind of let's figure out what people are trying to do. That's why we have them set up in these modules, right? We had 55 different projects and 7 modules. We kind of start to bin them and say, okay, you need to be on a port. That's easy. Okay, you need to be on a vessel. Let's kind of figure out what that vessel is. And we go through that planning process. So really long answer to your question. The idea is to make it as easy as possible and as free as possible. But if there are specific needs that aren't being addressed otherwise, then we have to figure out how to kind of capture those costs. Yes, sir.
Do you support like the accreditation of the systems that allow us to connect?
The accreditation is always kind of an interesting issue. I'm going to say yes and no, which is not a good answer, I realize. We're trying to be kind of as early in the phase as possible. So, before you as a company or as an entity have to go through the accreditation, let's kind of figure out, does it even work? And how does it work? And can we get it in the hands of somebody who would be using it? That's really where the Antex Coastal Trident part fits in. Assuming that it works, and and there's a need to then go through the accreditation process, we would help you from a kind of warfare center, tech bridge, Naval X perspective, like Steve said, kind of help you kind of work through who's the right person. Because we're not using operational ships in the program, a lot of times we don't have to go through the accreditation process, right? We're trying to just make it as low barrier as possible to get out onto the system without having to then go through kind of the administrative stuff, so that you don't go through that just to then find out, oh, it doesn't work, I need to tweak it or change it or something like that. Did that capture your question? Okay, good question. Yes, sir. Yep.
Of September. How long ago did you call for those projects?
So those projects are ones that have done something in the program this year. So
Okay.
there wasn't kind of a specific call. It was, hey, you're one of the 55 projects that participated. Are you interested, and is there value kind of briefing out what you learned for it?
Understood.
And then we'll start again, next year. So it's not like a wide call for project briefings. It's really, the way to kind of come together from the program and then brief out the results.
So really, if you want to demonstrate a project, we just get up with you.
Yep,
and we start
absolutely.
that process. Okay.
One more.
So Is there a way for other syscoms, other groups within the Navy that are not traditionally aligned with these exercises to inject their problem statements into your problem set?
Yeah, so we, unlike some of the other Antex events, and I'm going to put Rick on the spot. He can speak to those, right? We don't go out with kind of a, hey, these are the 3 or 4 things that we're looking for as kind of a call for proposal. We kick it off with a concept development meeting where it's like we generally know, hey, these are kind of big Navy interest areas. If you industry, if you academia, if you other lab have some experimentation, some capability that you want to sort of further develop in the program, bring it in. There are opportunities for other syscoms and stuff to come in and kind of look at, hey, who's doing what, and if you said, hey, I'm really interested in this, can you help find capabilities in there? Then obviously we can go through that route. We can engage with our peer partner. We can look across the NRD&E in order to do that. But kind of left to our own, it's really kind of a broad call with sort of big general ideas. I know, like for next year, for instance, being an in-service engineering of the future, kind of looking at how we're going to be supporting ships. We know it's going to be corrosion technologies, augmented virtual reality for maintenance and tech assist, right? Additive manufacturing. That's kind of the broad area that we're moving in. But it's easy to kind of bring in somebody else if a syscom's interested in something or has a specific focus area. We have done that in the past. Thank you.
So for the open house, is that audience for that mostly other demonstrators or program offices? Like, who's the main audience for the open house?
Yeah, good question. Kind of all the above. It is sort of first and foremost meant for anybody who participated as a chance to kind of come back together, because we are so geographically and time separated on what we're doing. And so it started as a, hey, let's just kind of bring everybody back together as an informal venue to kind of share and collaborate. Over the last couple of years of doing it, we realized, hey, there's a lot of benefit. Just, there's people that are interested kind of in general of what's happening and what the technology is. And so we get all sorts, and we welcome everybody. It is sort of wide open, distro A. Anybody can come in. It's not a sales event, right? It's not really meant to sort of market. It's not a fancy conference with all the settings that go with that. It's in a warehouse as kind of a let's collaborate and talk about what we did, demonstrate what we did, share information. But for those who see value in that, they're welcome to attend and participate. Yeah.
So you have a demo that starts maybe in June and goes through like September, demo period. So say you get something on like an offshore platform or self-defense test ship, would somebody be riding the self-defense test ship during that 2-month period? Would be meals included? Would there be fees charged? And then, or if it's on an offshore platform, would there be transportation out to the platform and back daily or something?
Yes to all of that. Now, normally we're not underway on the self-defense test ship for days at a time. Usually we'll go out. Again, we try and make this as cheap and easy as possible. So, taking the self-defense test ship out for a day, sort of dedicated to experiment, can get pretty costly. So what we'll usually try and do is figure out, hey, can we put something on as it's doing something else? Or maybe when it's going down to San Diego to fuel, we can do some experimentation on it and things like that. Trying to keep that as low cost and easy to get on as possible. You asked about kind of getting out to the offshore platforms. Again, that's sort of the benefit of partnering with the larger exercise community. So, LA Sheriff, for instance, has a lot of maritime capability. As a sheriff's department, they have a, pretty significant airlift capability as well as different sea vessels. And so, we can sort of parallel up with an exercise that they're doing on the platform. This is what we did this year, right? They were looking at kind of a radiological response exercise to a platform. Well, that's a great venue for us and technology to get out there. We can kind of ride along with them. So again, we're trying to make it as low cost as possible. But with that, you have to be kind of flexible, right? So back to the question is,
Okay.
If you really need to be out there on a certain day, then, you know, we'll figure out how to charter a boat or get a boat or something like that out there. If you have some flexibility, and we can kind of work within the venue, then we're going to kind of figure out how to make that happen.
Just to let the virtual audience know, we are going to be switching stage. You guys can still continue to ask questions in here, but the next talk is about to start on the global stage.
Presentations time. Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you, and hope if you're interested.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome back from Chow, everybody. And I know we just heard Alan Yeager from the Port Hueneme Tech Bridge. I think it was FathomWorks is his partner out there. He just gave a presentation on the Coastal Trident ANTX. Alan is a dear friend of mine, and we love to collaborate on things. And he's a lot smarter than me, so I like learning from him. So that's great if you had the opportunity to listen to what Alan had to talk about. But today we're here to talk about, well, one other thing that I forgot to mention, and then we'll go live with you'll see some badges that have sponsor stickers on them. And sponsor stickers mean a couple of different things. Like I introduced the Marines earlier today from the PAO class, the PAO school at Fort Meade. If their commanding officer was here, they would get a sponsor sticker. So it just doesn't take money, things like that. It's resources of human capital as well, right? So we need folks to run this. We have projectors from PEO MLB. So this projector up here is from PEO MLB. The big screen that you saw Alan talking against is from NOC-AD. Each of those people get sponsor stickers because they gave something to this event. Again, this event is sponsored by Code 36, Dr. Carlin. He paid for like this banner and some things like that. So those are the fantastic things that we need. But then when it comes down to other bits and pieces, we do need those. So without further ado, I want to talk to you or introduce to you Google Flexible Data Ecosystems. Is that what it's called? No, I don't know. But they're going to talk about artificial intelligence, some machine learning, and go through a great presentation. So I think there's been enough time to transition into the room. I appreciate it. And we've got a nice little bit cooler room. And PFC Rodriguez is going to help me with the mic. So I'm going to give her this mic. You'll use that mic. And when questions come up, Sean, you just, Rodriguez here will take care of it for you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, Naval X, for hosting us. We really appreciate you having us up here on stage to talk a little bit about some of our ideas, good, bad, or otherwise. We'll let you guys be the judge of that. My name's Sean Pike. I manage the Navy and Marine Corps for Google Cloud. That includes the entire Alphabet ecosystem as well. So all the other companies that are a part of that, I have reached back into. I'll let Ming go ahead and.
Yep, Ming Ling. I'm an engineer in Google. I've been fortunate to work in the defense and IC space for many, many years. So been a resident of DC for 10 plus years. So we've been working at this quite a bit. Joining Google, I know we're the late entrant into this overall CSP space, but hopefully some of the capabilities I want to demonstrate is going to be meaningful to you guys, and it's being implemented through various agencies already. So.
Great, thanks, Ming. And we'll talk about how it's being implemented in the Navy and where we think it can go in a use case today. We are going to demo today, so we will show capability, not just slideware, and we hope that's of interest. We hope people on the live stream can see it well. We're happy to video it and send it out as well post-presentation. So today we're really going to talk about naval AI ML at scale, how do we actually adopt it in a large capacity? So what you're seeing on the screen now is a mantra that we operate by on the DoD team at Google Cloud. We do not think that DoD has an innovation problem, quite the contrary, in fact. We think the real root of the issue is adoption at a level of scale that's needed. How do you take all the great small business contractors you work with and effectively plug them in systematically to get things at scale? That can be doing advanced analytics, certainly AI, ML, and that's what we're going to talk about today, particularly with one capability we'll demo to kind of give an idea of how we can spread the love, so to say, with AI and ML throughout the services of the Navy and Marine Corps. So on this slide, you can see here, everyone knows what the objective is, I think, and everyone talks about it. Very markety buzzwords out there on AI and ML. It seems these days that everyone does AI and ML, and it's kind of interesting hearing about how they're trying to do it, which is a great thing. But there's a lot of confusion out there as well. There is serious advantages to be gained when we're able to do this in a large context. If you look at what the commercial space does gain, right, it's obviously a great reference point there. I think the Navy, especially on the business side, really needs this because it can feed and focus on operations, right? There's too much distraction, and you can see it in the briefs that Admiral Gilday gives on the Hill on things like maintenance, and those problems are very solvable at a large scale that we'll go through today. So one of the use cases, this is what I would consider on the tactical end that we are currently doing with the Navy right now, is a corrosion detection use case. And this can have application to a number of maintenance areas, not just corrosion. There's some really interesting things about this use case and the technology that was used that we'll demo today that kind of proves the point of adoption. So in this use case, what we're essentially doing is drones are flying around the top sides of ships and they're taking pictures, doing video, right? That's a big, important part of the equation. How do you actually capture all that data and feed it into an operational system? What then happens is we had an analyst who is an expert in corrosion, a naval analyst, not a data scientist, very important there, actually train this model in order to detect corrosion, right? Phase one was very simple. Is it corrosion or is it not? Phase two was defining levels of severity of the corrosion, right? To determine like what to do about it. The important part of that analyst and the adoption message there is we took the brain of this analyst and now he's in a competition to see if he can make the model beat him for identifying corrosion, right? Like that's the object, right? He does this. Ming will walk through how this is done. Simple point and click way. The heavy lifting does the rest. We can do this at, what y'all know is Google scale. Throw out whatever data you have and we can do that. So if it's hundreds of thousands of pictures, great. The way I like to think about how this kind of approach works, it's interesting, is I imagine to myself if I had, 100 years to learn one discipline, 100 years of time. The thing we can do in machine learning and AI is we can compress that into minutes. We can compress that into seconds, right? If I had 100 years to do one of my favorite things, play ice hockey, I probably still wouldn't make the NHL, but who knows? Maybe I'd, play college, right? Like that's the idea. So really important there. So in the program, we got initially over 90% accuracy in that phase one. Then we moved to phase two. And this is where we start to get interesting with submersible drones, obviously go under the water line, start to collect data there, use things like infrared, et cetera, to again, train more models and get more advanced. And again, we haven't even brought in the data scientists at this point, and I think that's key. Next slide. So you can see some of the highlights there that I just mentioned on kind of exploring the different points of analysis in this project. Go ahead, next slide. So let's get to the meat of this and kind of how this is done. I'm going to let Ming take over here and introduce what we call auto machine learning, right? What you're looking at here is the entire portfolio of Vertex AI, which is a Google AI platform. This is only a portion of it. Think about this in terms of every stare and compare job in the Navy and Marine Corps that has to do with repeatable tasks, video and vision is really a candidate to enhance with AI and ML. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ming. He's going to dive into how the technology works and demo.
Thanks. Everybody can hear me okay? I know there's the afternoon session. So quick show of hand, how many people use AI, ML every day? Yeah, we all do. We all have a smartphone. I see a bunch of smartphones around the room. The way you navigate to here is via some type of algorithm, the way you check your email, or the way you are used to auto-responding in Gmail. If you just tap through the whole thing, it's already a model trained in how you would normally respond to emails, and it's doing that for you, right? So I know we're not Facebook, but if you use Facebook, it's predicting who your friends are, who you may like, and blah, 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 so on and so forth. So we're consumers of that every day. And I want to challenge a little bit about enterprise usage of AI ML, right? So why is it that from a consumer perspective, it's so easy to consume, so readily available, but when it comes to enterprise, it is super hard? How many folks use ML AI in work today? I do, but probably very few, right? Because it's just perceived to be hard to implement. And I want to challenge some of these notions. And so the first notion is it's very costly and it takes a big team to implement. That is not true. And the second one is, hey, once I get a model trained, once I have this millions of dollars to train a custom model, I should not have to touch it for years to come. And that's also not true, because training models and implementing some type of algorithm is a very iterative process. You need to establish a feedback loop so that you can constantly deploy. So when we look at how models are trained, models are deployed, and models are leveraged, it is rarely true that you create a single model that solves all your problems. In many use cases, even in corrosion, it's many models. First model to detect rust, second model to detect phase 2 or additional damages, right? And then kind of chain them together to get your ultimate result. Because if you're going to create that one ring that solves all your problems, then you're going to spend years and years of trying to figure out what that problem is, ultimately not getting the proper feedback and lead to failure. So these are two things I want to challenge. So from a Google perspective, how can I consume AI cheaply today? So as mentioned, all of our products where you train on natural language processing, meaning if you want to translate English to a foreign language, Farsi, right? Persian, any kind of interesting languages that are relevant in our community, it's already there. So there's the Google Natural Language Translate API. Your Android phone does it, right? If you just say, hey, translate something to me in a different language, we do it. And from motion detection, we also do it. And all these services are exposed as API endpoints for common objects. So if you want to run a model today to say, I want to detect common Fortune 500 company logos, there's an API. Just create a simple key, point to that API, and you're done. Same thing for document processing. So we started training a set of common documents, your tax forms, your health forms, right? Public forms. And we created a product called Doc AI. So if you want to process all these common documents, then process it to an API. So going to what Sean was talking about, very rigorous and time-consuming human type of activities, how to read through an entire document. So if I take a good example in DoD is the sit rep, right? So for anybody to get promoted, their sit rep has to be typed up exactly correct, spelling correct. And many times it goes through the entire chain only to catch like a spelling mistake and then sent all the way back in the beginning and the chain starts all over again, right? Why do we do that when we can just simply say we're going to process it through like a document AI model so that these low-hanging fruits can be identified and those manual tasks can be simplified so that when it gets to the final process, it's just yes or no, right? Promote it, demote it. Well, I don't know if that happens, but so that's what we have. This is to the leftmost field. That's pre-trained models for vision, for language. The second one is what we're going to demo and kind of focus on today is AutoML. So going to the SITREP and even the Navy corrosion type of example, these are models that we generally understand from a Google train model perspective, but don't quite understand, meaning that we need additional input. So what you can do from that product perspective is not starting a team of data scientists and ML specialists to understand that. It's just a general set of business users that understands what you're looking for. So in AutoML Vision example, you're uploading a minimum of 20 to 50 images. And then you as users, you start labeling on these images you care about. And you say, this is my label for X, Y, and Z. And I'll show you that in a bit. And then you're just using the raw compute horsepower of a Google data center because we understand how to put neural networks together to say, create a model for me. And then we have a sandbox for you to deploy that model and to tell you what the confusion matrix is, so how accurate your model is behaving if you give us some sample data. That enforces your next iterative learning process to say, do I need to train more? Or is my model good enough, right? And finally, in the AutoML Vision, AutoML product family suite, if you look at the Navy use case, right? At the end of the day, you're gonna be on a cruiser. You're not gonna be able to get connection to GCP or internet from a ship. We have ways to export these pieces of software as a container, which is a small unit of, it's a small unit of software application that you can deploy on a laptop or something even smaller on a Raspberry Pi or even on a drone. So you can do detection at edge, right? And then finally, to the rightmost use case, at least on my slide, is just that if you do have a large team of data scientists, right, and you want to run those models, you have Python notebooks, blah, 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 you know how to do everything, then we provide the raw materials you need to build a fairly robust ML AI practice around this as well, right? But what we want to focus on is the starting point is actually nothing. Go to translate, google.com/translate or google.com/vision. You have your Vision API right there for everything you want to do in Vision, even sentiment analysis. And then when you go to translate, you can translate to all like 200 different languages today. So cutting into any questions before I proceed. All right. So cutting into AutoML Vision a little bit, I'll just explain lay of the land, how we solve the two challenges initially. In terms of how you start an AutoML Vision project is you start with a minimum of 20 to 50 images, right? And then you define this is my training set and this is my testing set. Training set meaning that I am going to label my images for a classification I want. So if I look at, in this example, just say, look, if I'm looking at a picture, I'm gonna label every single box that has a ship in it, right? And then I'm gonna leave 10 images alone. That's my testing set, meaning that once the model is trained, then the AutoML product will naturally use those untagged images as testing to see if it's correct, right? You're gonna provide a flag, but you're not gonna ask it to train, but all this is automated. And then AutoML gives you the option of deploying this product to test locally. So if you have additional pictures, you want to say, I want to use a image I find on Google Photos, whatever have you. I want to test for its simple accuracy, right? It creates the endpoint for you so you can do that. And then finally, if you want to deploy to your production environment, you say, hey, this is the target environment I want to deploy to. This is a basic CPU type of system. My end deployment target or a TensorFlow is my target system. Then you can select that as well. And then boom, you get a container and export it. So all these things are essentially taking out of the box for you, right? So it's not that you're cheating in your overall project. It's just we realize all these steps that a lot of these ML engagements goes through are just repeatable steps. And we want to create the boilerplates so these things can happen easily and more consistently. And then going over to the second part, right? Remember, if you that first picture I flashed about set it and forget it. The way we're addressing that is there's a concept in AutoML called pipelines. Pipelines is the ability for me to deploy a model and then take user feedback. As users upload more images to tell me like what they want to detect, users can also inform whether my images are on target or totally off. And from the user input, I can continuously train my model to raise the accuracy. So with that, I'll cut over to demo. Any questions?
Just a question, since we're not talking too much about products today, more so on models and how to scale innovation in our networks. Just wanted to see, as you're going through this process, where do you think the Department of Navy is adopting these sort of system of systems and rapid insertion of new technology well, and where do you think we have a breakdown using your framework?
I didn't
I
quite
can try
understand that.
again. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Please.
as we talk about pipelines, and as we talk about data integration, user interfaces, kind of like a lot of the pieces of what you're saying.
Yep.
You've worked with the Department of Navy for a while. So where do you think we are doing well at capturing, and where do you think we're having challenges adapting to models that work in commercial industry? Yeah, maybe Sean can
I'll
help.
take one shot at it.
Okay.
I think the first problem with how Navy is thinking about these engagements is that the incorrect belief that you had to have petabytes of information to start, and that's not true, right? The starting point should be, I have a very manual and labor-intensive task that I know very well what the process should be, and I just need something to teach me how to do it, or something to process it so that I can have other folks work on the higher level stuff, right? The stuff that actually is my business function. So put it in like Navy language. There's like below the waterline type of activities that we have to do to make sure that the boat is floating. This is what some of the things that we can kind of automate away so that folks can work on the magic. And where things are working well with the Navy, we have some interesting, I don't know any Navy projects off the top of my head, but the corrosion detection is an awesome start, right? I mean, if you think about that, you don't have to have folks that's flying around in helicopters looking at rust, where you can just fly a drone that's $200, $300, and it solves your problem and can cover more surface area. And I'll give the rest to Sean, because he's eager to talk about something.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Whitney. And I think regardless of the frameworks you use, the products you use, there are a few things. What I've seen is you get specialists in certain areas, right, that are isolated on their own desktop in their own language in the data science community. And I come from there, so I love the data scientists. I wouldn't take that the wrong way. But you essentially get folks that, hey, I use SAS and I use R, and they do a lot of research projects, right? There are so many of these research projects. But from a Google perspective, what we see, and from industry perspective, I think at large, is where is the connection into the larger system, right? Not from a paper trail process perspective, but what is the actual system that does the heavy lifting on things where you don't want a data scientist or even someone using any capability that's low code, no code to be in. And I'll tell you what those areas are that we see, at least from our perspective: data governance and security, right? I can give Google examples of this internally that kind of inform that. But basically, when the innovators are worried about patching and they're worried about deploying and they're worried about all the things, as Ming said, to kind of keep the boat afloat, they are not spending time innovating, right? And they are not plugged into this larger ecosystem. And that is an IT system at some level, whether built by the Navy, built by contractors, whatever. If there is a pluggable ecosystem where someone could take their models, share them, use them, scale them, right? I kind of think that's where the Navy, the DoD at large should go, my personal opinion, because while, the Navy and Marines might think we got to put the onus on the contractors to do those things, if they figure all that out from an ecosystem perspective, they're going to get much better results. The example at Google is developers plug in, we call it Borg. We're geeky. We love Star Trek, if you get the reference from the 90s. They don't worry about any security, nothing. They just worry about, what am I innovating on today? It's an extreme example, but it's where the Navy and Marines need to go. Hope that kind of answers the question. I think it's a great question.
Yeah, quick clarification. Like, it's not that we don't believe in security. The security is inherently in the system. So it's already there. So we assume it's taken care of for you, right? And those are like the boilerplate components of the Borg system. And the Borg system, from the Borg system, actually born Kubernetes. So if you are an organization looking at Kubernetes today, it's actually essentially a merge of the Borg and a bunch of other systems within Google. All right, so cutting over to AutoML and how to start. So what we're looking at today is AutoML Vision. A bunch of other AutoML products. AutoML Translate is actually being used in special operations to a certain degree for certain languages, right? And the bottom line is Google has a lot of data to train these things, and the government doesn't. And it's hard to acquire these data sources, whereas it's fairly easy because there's a search platform and a lot of folks used it for many, many years. So on AutoML Vision, this is where we kind of think about how well we can train models based on vision. And the use case we are looking for this demo is actually ONI. ONI is looking at if I have just a static camera that's consumer grade, how do I identify ships, right? I can looking at a very far view of the scenery. How do I identify ships that are coming in? How do I identify that's not a ship? And then I can further investigate whether a ship is a military ship or a commercial vehicle, right? So kind of looking at the first ONI model that if you look at the data set, we've uploaded 3,903 images. We didn't tag all of them. As you can see, we label 526 of them, and then we got bored and say the rest is the training set. And the way we label it is essentially you have a little picture like that, and me as a user, I'm going to manually go select the area of focus I'm interested in, and I'm going to place something called a label, say boat, right? And then I say, Google, go run, go figure out from all these 3,000 something images, what's a boat and what's not a boat, and then give me your confidence level once that model is trained. So what does it look like as an end product? The end product is a model that Google will create called ONI Ships, right? And from this model, I can deploy very easily so I can test, right? So the cycle, the feedback loop is very, very important as you're thinking about these models. Then with this feedback loop, I can say, hey, I want to deploy very, very quickly. Give me some data points on how the model is behaving when it's trying to detect something that is a boat, right? And then to test, I want to upload a simple image from my desktop, AutoML Vision, just USS Missouri. As you guys probably have figured out, I just downloaded off of Google Photos, right? So it's saying, I can generally understand what this boat is. But this picture I want to show you is actually not the perfect picture for the model, because the way, if you remember what I described before, this model is built from a far view perspective as boats are coming in, right? So it's actually not very good at detecting boats very up and close to me because it thinks it's looking at a picture that is very, very wide. So this is actually not a great model. So it's going to tell you that from the confidence level perspective, it's not very high, right? It wasn't able to detect anything, even though with human eyes, we say this is obviously a boat. So what's wrong with this model? So what we want to do is we want to give it the right frame for these models to perform efficiently, and then put it in a chain to say how I'm going to chain these models together to derive at the end result and be sure of the end result that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking at a fleet of boats.
So as you pick up your object recognition, which is fantastic, you are going to lose your live feed. So you can certainly go on with the audience, but for our live feed members coming in, they are going to lose your voice. So I think it happens in 2 minutes. I was a terrible MC and didn't give you a time hack.
No, that's great. So this is it actually, right? So this is fairly close to the end, but if you look at the overall, if I provide the right picture, right, it's able to identify boats with fairly high confidence. And cutting over to another model that I want to detect, going to the earlier scenario, if a boat is of military or commercial, we have something that we trained on another data set, and just show you the quick data set. So from this data set, we uploaded 193 images, and we label them by human hand to say, this is a military boat, this is a fishing ship, this is a tugboat, right? So we just kind of label this and just say, Google, go train a model based off of that. And we deploy the model. This is the ship model. So going to the same way of testing. So we have a feedback loop, USS Missouri. Now it's going to tell me with very high confidence, right? Now, almost 99% sure it's a military build. So 2 points I want to make here. AutoML, super easy. Starting point, couple hours with somebody that has domain knowledge of image or language, right? And then the second point is don't believe in a single model that can solve all your problems.
Oh, okay, thank you. Y'all are great. Y'all are great. I didn't wear shoes for comfort today. I'm like, they're cute. I wore it for fashion. Fashion, you suffer for comfort. See? I'm old. Trust me, tomorrow I'm gonna have my tennis shoes on. Micro in a chair? Yeah. Oh. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to the summit stage. I have here Mr. Mark Johnson from IMPAX. So IMPAX, I said it with X. If you guys don't know partnership intermediary agreements, you will hear a lot of them. If you guys are here at the Agility Summit, that's like the way to go in the government now. So partnership intermediary agreement, IMPAX has one with NOC-AD since 2017. And so Mark is going to tell you a little bit about what they do over the next 20 minutes or so, and then we'll take some questions and answers after it. So yeah, Mark, the stage is yours.
All right. Okay. Maybe this will work better. Yeah. All right. I'm Mark Johnson. I'm the director of IMPAX. We're located down at Patuxent River. Working on the slide. Mic and slides. Okay. There. Okay. Okay. I'm Mark Johnson. I'm the director of IMPAX down at Patuxent River, NAS Patuxent River. In 2017, NOC-AD established the IMPAX PIA with GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute, to counter things that are listed here, things that have been mentioned in many of the briefs. Technology is outpacing our ability to rapidly field that new technology. S&T programs lack agility, particularly whenever it gets inside the DoD 5000 framework. And adversaries are not constrained by FAR restrictions. So our PIA is set up to counter these and get capability to NOC-AD constituents as soon as possible. Our mission, as you can see, is to work with academia, government, and industry partners to spin technology into naval aviation assets as soon as possible, as quickly, as soon as the technology is ready. I'm going to go straight to the contracting piece of this, because a big part of getting capability into the fleet is how long it takes to get something on contract. I think we all probably have experience with this. For us, for the PIA, we fall under USC section 35 or 3715, which allows us special non-FAR processes to get on contract quickly. As long as we have a merit-based competition, we can award a contract and get capability heading toward the fleet. A lot of ways to get on contract. Most of them are FAR-based, but where we fall into it with the PIA is the non-FAR-based side. Next slide. Okay, innovation pipeline. You've seen this in other briefs. This is a good example. I can explain where IMPAX really falls out. IMPAX, what we do is on the left side, in the center, getting into contract, get it on contract, OT contract, is you have to have a consortium to get something on an OT contract. We use the Naval Aviation System Consortium down at Pax River. And on the right side, NOC-AD has another organization, Airworks, that quickly takes a capability, integrates it, looks at the certs that are required and flight clearances to get it into an aircraft. So looking on the left side of this chart for IMPAX, we spend a lot of time with the sourcing. We sit down with the PMA, with NOC-AD, with other customers down at Pax River, spend a lot of time discussing what are the requirements. Often they'll come in with, we have a widget, we have rumors that there's a better widget out there. We want to just improve, get something better than we have today. Well, that's great. What we do is sit down with them. Let's define what the current baseline is. What is the performance of the widget you have deployed today? Let's define that capabilities, and then the curate piece. Let's have a long conversation on what the requirements would need to be better than the current widget. And then let's get those requirements written down, and let's get them written in a way where we can measure them. All that goes into supporting a merit-based competition. And then we do a scan. We call it tech scan. We will go out, look at industry, see what the current technology is for that new widget. What's out there? Is there something out there that can meet those requirements we've discussed? We'll come back with a report, a tech scan. We have multiple databases we investigate, that we have multiple industry partners. We have our IMPAX ecosystem. We polled to look at what capabilities are out there for that new widget. And we come back with a report, and we will tell the customer, this is what we see. We see these requirements being met. We see these being more challenging. And we'll have a pretty long conversation with the customer on what they want to do next. If they want to proceed, that's where we get into incubate. For us, the incubate is demonstrations, is price challenges. The next step after the tech scan would be, hey, let's put something out on what used to be FedBizOps, right? SAM, challenge.gov, multiple to the ecosystem. We'll get the information out to industry. They will respond with those, whether they can meet those requirements, and we'll do a demonstration. We'll do a price challenge, and the like to support the customer needs. And then out of that, as long as the requirements were written properly, it's a merit-based competition. We have a winner or a couple of winners, and the customer can decide to carry those to the next phase into prototyping. At that point, we start talking to the NASC to use an OT contract for a prototyping contract, and then that contract gets put in place, and then we'll continue the process with validating, fielding, and sustaining. Those processes can be used if it's a NOC. We'll employ Airworks down at NOC AD to help with that portion of it. Some PMAs will want to do that portion themselves. It's just up to the customer. Next slide. Okay, our process, that far left I just talked about. Initially, meeting with the customer, defining the requirements, making sure we have measurable requirements, is clear on what they're looking for. That can take a week, sometimes 2 or 3. It depends on how complicated the system is. The second column there is getting us on contracts. That's 3 to 6 weeks. Working with Rick Tarr in the Technology Transition Office, we'll get what we call a CPO in place, get us on contract, and we'll start executing. 1 to 6 months, we'll go out, do the tech scan, we'll set up the price challenge, we'll set up the demonstration, we'll go out to industry to get RFPs back from them, and we'll execute a merit-based competition, demo, or price challenge. And then we write a report. It takes about a month to write the report. And then we have a real conversation with the customer on what they want to do next. And if they want to go get it on contract, get a prototype contract in place, we will work with the NASC to do that. That whole process, quick ones, about 3 months. We've done that. Typical ones, probably about 6 months. Long ones, about 9 months. It really comes down to how complex the requirements are, how niche the widget is, if you will. All right, next slide. Tech scans. We always do a tech scan. Every project we've had, we go out, look at, here's the requirements, what capability, what systems are out there that actually meet this capability. We come back with to the customer, and sometimes they'll say, well, we'll wait, maybe the technology isn't there yet, or let's proceed with the competition. We have different levels of tech scan, real quick one, several weeks. You can see in this column right here, to the knowledge level where we're actually going out, getting SMEs, engineering SMEs in the field we're talking about, back at some research labs to really understand what the capabilities are out there. So typically, it's the information level. Information level, so data level takes about 2 weeks. Information levels, 30 to 60 days. Knowledge level tech scans, about 3 months, about 90 days. Again, just depending. But every project starts with a tech scan once we understand the requirements. Next slide. Again, just showing how we work as partners with the NASC, work with partners with Airworks. We do that left side, help define the requirements, look at whether there is a widget out there that meets the requirements, and we do the merit-based competition. Hand it to NASC to get us on contract, and then we work with NOC to do the fleet fielding. What are the flight clearance requirements? What are the certs required for the widget? And how would we integrate this widget with the platform? Next slide. We've had many successes. We have a broad scope of customers. You can see everything from multiple PEOs, a lot of unmanned PMAs reach out to us. Weapons, Tomahawk, we have weapons PMAs that reach out to us. These are you can see the ones that we have completed. You can see down below, you see we have expeditionary UASs we're working on now, helmet mounted queuing systems we're working on, and logistics UAVs we're working on. To get into some of the specifics of ones we've accomplished, next slide. We've worked with PMA 266 for the MUX prize challenge. This is for payloads. There were 4 $1 million prize challenges we executed for PMA 266. In looking at the 4 areas, 4 different payloads, an EW payload, an airborne early warning payload, ISR, and comms relay, 4 different payloads. Through this process, they were able to have 28 different payload designs that they could pick from. We were able to whittle those down, help them isolate which ones really met their requirements, and it's moving into the next phase. That's 266 MUX. ARPED Logistics. This whole process was 3 months long, very quick. They came with money and they came with requirements. They clearly knew what the requirements they wanted. A vertical takeoff and landing, logistics, UAS for ship to shore, and then back, shore to ship. We did the tech scan. We identified 65 potential solutions. We fed that to the government. We looked at their requirements. They worked it down to, we sent out the request. 19 industry members responded. The government looked at the 19. They whittled it down to 9, 6 primary, 3 alternative. And then when it came game day, 2 showed up. So I think some of them probably had UAVs they thought would be at the right maturity level to do a demonstration. It didn't work out. 2 showed up. Skyways won. Skyways is a 2-year-old company from Austin, Texas that did not have a DoD contract. That DoD was not on their radar at all. Next thing you know, they have a DoD contract and things have worked out pretty well for them. 3 months. Next slide. Yeah. 3 months with the OT. Tactical Resupply UAS Challenge, another prize challenge. We did the tech scan, identified the state of the art. We went out with a special notice on FedBizOps, had 16 applications were received. Out of those 16, 6 were selected to travel to Yuma, and we did a prize challenge competition in Yuma, and they got one solution. And they got an OT contract out of it.
tech scans, do you work with different companies, also work with DIA, or just work that internally? Is that like an internal closed loop system where you just go out and scout the technologies? You also work with other companies and work with other, tech scouts per se across the.
So when we do a tech scan, there's certain that we have access to multiple databases for things that are currently fielded. A lot of it's gumshoe, detective work where you're picking up the phone, you're calling different industry partners to see if partners is a strong word. You look at different industries, companies to see if they have these type capabilities or not.
Yeah, but they're still internal inside the IMPAX.
Yes.
You guys,
Yeah. That's why. So when we come back with the tech scan, that's what we found. That does not mean it's all that's out there, right? That's important to understand, the customer to understand. That's why. So you're not going to make a decision of who participates in a price challenge off a tech scan. This is just giving them an idea of, for the technology they're looking for, how mature is it out there? Maybe it's not mature enough to go buy something off the shelf. Maybe they're getting into a game where they need to partner with industry to, the prototype piece is important, to mature that technology. So that's why after the tech scan, that gives the customer a good feeling on whether the technology's mature or not.
you working that off the first part of it, where you're gathering the requirements from the stakeholder, so that kind of gives you that idea. So do you think are you doing enough good job? Like globally, you're focusing on the U.S. market, like the companies are U.S., or you're also looking at strategic partnerships across the globe to look what they're doing as well. Because that's kind of a big part.
It is. So those requirements are based on what the customer wants, but we do look. We cast a wide net whenever we look.
Thank you.
This event got the ASN RDA Competition Excellence Acquisition Team of the Year. It went off very well. Next slide. So that's IMPAX. We've been doing it since 2017. It's been I think we have a pretty solid process. We're a learning organization. We're always tweaking it. It works pretty well. I have some flyers back on the back table. I have some business cards. If there's questions, well, first of all, are there questions? Let me open it up to questions.
So to get to a merit-based competition, right, you have to solicit. You have to solicit at that point, no tech scan. You're out there actively soliciting, right?
Yeah, so that tech scan happens. The customer says, hey, technology's not immature. We're going to put it on hold for a little bit. Or they say, okay, there's enough. We're interested. It looks like if we go out, if we post a special notice, we'll have enough industry partners come back to make it a worthwhile competition. So the tech scan and the demo price challenge is kind of independent. That tech scan just gives a feel for what to expect. Does that make sense? So whenever it is the price challenge, the demos, they're open to anybody who's willing to respond. Sure.
So if you're wildly successful on your demonstration after you've done all that business, then do you still have to go through a FAR-based contract then to acquire that capability at scale for the Navy?
We have always used the NASC for OTA.
You can prototype like.
So there is the ability to go to scale under that authority, the 10 USC 2631B or whatever. That once you've hit certain gates for the prototyping phase, you can deploy to scale under the same OT contract vehicle. You don't have to convert to a FAR-based contract vehicle.
We did meet with a customer a couple of weeks ago, and since then, their idea has really grown. So they're OpNav's talking about grabbing it, making an ACAT-2 program. So our role in that may be diminished because of that. But I would still encourage them to do a tech scan at least know what's out there. It may uncover something that they haven't discovered. And I'm harping on a lot of the tech scans here. Often the customers are the experts. Like if it's a UAV tech scan, the people coming to us, they're the PMAs that do this. They're the experts. What they're asking us to do is go, hey, in the PMA, you often get put in this position where you're really listening to your prime. Your prime has your ears so much, and you're validating what they are saying by doing a tech scan or seeing if they're so focused on these areas, particularly like UAVs. There's so many other companies out doing that. What else is out there? So they can get that information from us. Any other questions? Yeah. Keep them coming, yeah.
So does NavAir have a singular rule set for what a merit-based competition is? I mean, there's usually a matrix of things you have to do and wickets you have to hit. Is there one rule set for NavAir?
Great question. So going back to the statute, you have to have competition to the extent possible to do it. So, and it's really, I've found more at the discretion of the agreements officer, whether you have met that statutory threshold. So unlike the FAR, there is some gray flexibility for the agreements officer to make the determination that they have fulfilled the statutory requirement. So there's not a set rubric, and I'd also say there's not necessarily a set OT contract either. It really, our interpretation is that Congress gave us that flexibility to go after prototyping in a way that they didn't want to bind the agreements officer's hands to say, you need to have enough competition, or what's the level of competition, or dictating the terms of the actual OT agreement.
So further question: do you ever get into a situation downstream where you believe you've done everything competition-wise as required for the grants or the grants officer on your program, and then the PEO's grants, or the PEO's FAR-based contracting officer says, not my.
Yeah, that great question. So we have not moved into fielding the Part F of that authority yet, and I think that's potentially where this would come up. We have consolidated all the OT authorities into a agile acquisition cell. And for the most part, OTs, at least within our command, although this culture is changing, are kind of some weird foreign beast. So the regular FAR-based agreements or contract officers kind of stay away. And so that's given us some flexibility to say, no one's second guessing like your acquisition strategy or competition strategy, whether you did a prize challenge or a demonstration, was 2 companies enough? Was your rubric detailed enough? So there has given us that flexibility, at least currently. Now, whether that's going to change in the landscape, and it just takes one of these to go, multi-billion dollars, and then people start saying, well, wait, how did that company, how did that Skyways get, an order for 500 million UAVs or something? But yeah.
We have that concern, and we talk about that concern because if you get downstream and it's nullified for some reason, nobody, that's bad for everybody. What we do is we get the PCO or the agreements officer to attend the early meetings, those requirement meetings. So they start formulating, they understand what we're trying to do here. So they're up to speed quick. So I kind of trust them to keep us honest.
But honestly, it comes in, at least within the Navy, and it's in a lot of different forms. Hack the Machine was a merit-based competition that you could have done an OT from. Some of the Antex events you could do OTs from, depending on how they did the grading rubric. So it really is each one defining what that competition is and what the threshold from an agreements officer perspective. I think the most important part that we've learned from some of the litigation is just being clear to industry what the upside is, that participating in this competition could lead to various forms of contracts and agreements.
Thank you. Out of interest, do you happen to know how many PCOs within NavAir actually have OTA warrants?
No.
That's a great question.
It is.
It's a complicated question. Currently, I think the official answer is we have 2 agreements officers with OT warrants. They have their current. Are you at NavAir?
Well, I used to be part of, but not as an acquisition person. So,
You know, in that warrant letter, there's some other language. So, technically, I think there are more that are there. They just haven't utilized it.
copy.
But formally, there's 2. So, if someone within a program office wanted to do an OT, they could go up to Lakehurst, we have an agreement software there that's the Center of Excellence, and we have one at Patch Server. And I think there's actually another one down in Orlando, so I think we have 3.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
So I would have thought that maybe Rick should have been up on stage too, because I think he's like the NavalX Tech Bridge resident expert in PIAs. So anything you got about PIAs, go to flood Rick's email. So next presentation is going to take part on the next stage in a few minutes. So virtual audience, just sit tight with us, and we'll be right back.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. So I'm going to make the folks on the virtual side jealous about not being here, but not because I want to make them feel bad. So don't forget, we've got the Fab Lab outside from NOC AD, brought down and run by Terry. So Terry should be out there available to give tours of the Fab Lab, which is fantastic. Well, here comes Terry now, I think. Is that Terry in the back? That is Terry. She's walking in to tell us about the Fab Lab. No. You're not on now, Terry. Terry, stop. You can't talk about your Fab Lab. All right, and then I had the great, I just ran into someone here who's from Indian Head. One of our Indian Head Warfare Center members are here. One of the chief engineers have come down and take a look at what we've got going on. It's not often we get Indian Head from the Warfare Center at Indian Head here to see what's going on. So I'm really glad to have her here and talking with our folks. But I think it's 14:30. It's time for me to turn over to Johannes. So Johannes is the Tech Bridge Director for, Northwest Keyport, Washington. And on the map, for those who want to use the fancy map, it's his little red dot right up here. So remember, the red dots are where we have Tech Bridge locations out there to support industry, academia, and then also warfare centers so we can collaborate better. So today, Johannes, you're going to talk about the Mission Accelerator Center, right? Is that the MAC, not multiple award contracts, not a MAC, but the Mission Accelerator Center, which I'm excited about. Johannes has shared with me a few things from about that setup, and it's really just fantastic the way you're going to do it. And Johannes, I hope everybody is settled in for a nice presentation. We're going to take some questions. We've got a mic runner, and then we can take some questions online. All right, thanks, Johannes. I'm not coming to Washington State on Monday. That's too much for me.
Good afternoon. My name is Johannes Schoenberg. As Steve mentioned, the Tech Bridge Director for the Pacific Northwest, and specifically going to talk about this concept that we're executing in partnership with the Office of Secretary of Defense National Security Innovation Center network called Ensign. And it's called the Mission Acceleration Center. And it's really dive into details here in a minute. First, let me sort of set the stage. Kind of why NavalX and Tech Bridge. You've seen this slide, I'm sure. But just to reiterate, an important part of what we do is working to touch the non-traditional ecosystems, the startups, the venture capital, where emerging tech is present. Because we have to be able to touch them, identify new technologies, and create opportunities to ingest that technology in the Department of Navy if we want to stay relevant in the 21st century. So just to kind of set that context again, there's a lot of challenges. So working with our nonprofit partners in the Washington state, there is a lot of challenges that we're all aware of for working with the Department of Defense, working with the Department of Navy. And they range from unclear where to start, defense is hard, lack of bandwidth to tackle new markets. There's a couple of really key ones in there too, is sort of that intellectual property protection and understanding that there's actually adversaries out there that are working to harvest that intellectual property. As well as that ease of foreign investment, especially as a startup. I'm hearing stories more and more now from business intelligence folks that startup company in Chicago, 3 founders working on a hypersonic technology, gets a obscure $6 million offer for investment from a real estate trust in Eastern Europe. Sounds pretty appealing. If I'm the founder, I'm desperate for a paycheck, that's going to be really easy to go ahead and accept that. DIU actually gave me that story. They dove into it because that startup was working with them. Their business intelligence unit dug into that and realized that funding, along with $400 million coming from all parts of the world, actually came from a central part of China that was focused entirely on hypersonics. And so these deals are happening all around the world, and particularly into the ecosystem. So if you look at Defense Innovation Unit a couple of years ago, Michael Brown, the director, put out this paper about and detailing the tech transfer strategy for China, Russia, other countries that are running a whole of government and whole of globe sort of approach to technology transfer. And so if you look, and this is an older statistic, but 10 to 16% of deals were working and taking kind of startups were taking money from shell companies that actually link back to state-owned enterprises. And so what that does is you have these entrepreneurs that are on the cutting edge of defense or emerging technologies, AIML, robotics, hypersonics, and they're actually nixing themselves out of the defense market from the first days and makes it impossible for us to ever work with. And so what can we do about that? So part of our mission as Tech Bridge is that engagement, that outreach, touching those non-traditional ecosystems. And We have obviously 15 across the country, growing as we talked about this morning. Up in the Northwest, we're using the innovation pipeline in the Northwest, just like you saw kind of next door in IMPAX and in this region with Pax River, really trying to solve problems for our customers. The Mission Acceleration Center is one part of what we do as the Northwest Tech Bridge, not everything. And so I have a bunch of other activities that we're also working, but this is one aspect. And so we do everything from supporting our team at Keyport with advanced manufacturing, helping connect with industry partners, helping connect with nonprofits, the manufacturing extension partnerships, working with other warfare centers across syscoms, across services. We truly are the super connector of connectors. So we've helped them work with DHA, create new relationships that they never had before to advance manufacturing for that mass design in the lower left. And that is actually an older version, but it just passed N95 standards. So it's technically the DoD's first N95 passed 3D printed mask. We also do a lot of lab intellectual property commercialization support in partnership with Ensign. So that Krill on the right is a testing and evaluation platform, low cost, that Keyport engineers developed. And then we work with Ensign to work with entrepreneurs to help commercialize that IP. We work, kind of broad strategic engagement across the region. We have a big interest in the Northwest in autonomous systems, especially at Keyport and the Department of Energy with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, our local billion-dollar lab. And so we're working with our economic development partners. We work with a lot of other government and industry partners. And they just put together a $500,000 grant request to initiate the first autonomous innovation cluster in the Pacific Northwest. It would range from SQUIM up in North Peninsula of Olympic Peninsula in Washington, all the way down to Tacoma, and create opportunities for startups, entrepreneurs, and students and universities to start engaging as a whole of region approach to this innovation cluster. So we really tried to drive that and put out the demand signal. Hey, these are what we're working on. These are the things that are of value. If you want to participate, there's global opportunity, dual use markets, and these are the opportunities. And then it's up to our community and industry partners to go out there and participate and activate. So then last is that sort of Mission Acceleration Center. So this is the space. Our PIA partner is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They're called Impact Washington, and they support manufacturers, small and medium-sized manufacturers in the state, support them with consulting services, training, connections to the Department of Defense, and they do technology transfer a lot between each other within industry, small companies and big companies. They work with state to help technology transfer efforts in those regards. And so they saw that, hey, we need to bring in an access point to the startup ecosystem, because that was a big gap in their portfolio as well. And so they recently signed a lease from a space up in Seattle called, we call it the Mission Acceleration Center, but it's really focused on bringing a whole host of kind of ecosystems together in one space, focused on national security. If you look at the steps there in the bottom middle, it's actually, those steps go up to a venture capital firm, the largest in the Northwest. There are thousands of startups, tens of thousands of startups in their portfolio, in their database, and thousands that they're funding, all the way from initial founder to public, going public on the market. They have an incredibly robust sort of network and ties into these non-traditional ecosystems. And so our PIA partner decided, hey, this is the space to be if we all in the community want to be able to access industry, defense, and academia, and want to be able to touch these founders. And so we really kind of they went down and decided we have to be co-located with this ecosystem that we're really trying to be part of, which fit perfectly with our mission at TechBridge. And so this space will have several goals. The first is sort of that warfighter integration and support, being able to bring warfighters to the space for problem curation events, hackathons, agile training, design thinking training, really helping warfighters become more entrepreneurial and understand kind of the key technologies, emerging technologies, learning straight from the founders that are working in those fields themselves. We really want to have a space that can activate and help catalyze our warfighters to understand what's out there and learn the techniques in industry that helps them be more innovative. And we had a conversation, actually, I guess, Second Fleet, before he turned over, made the comments to us, all the Tech Bridge directors, talking about how he really wanted to find ways to help his warfighters become more entrepreneurial, become more innovative, be able to think outside the box. So this is the way that we're trying to answer that call. 2 is industry engagement, persistent tech scanning, and then the opportunity to do that education, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then strategic engagement, so sort of reinforcing points 1 and 2 by bringing in leadership, senior leadership from the state, from DoD, in the region, industry, having those conversations, congressionals, talking about emerging technologies, the future impact on their policy making, on their commands, on their organizations, and being able to help find new opportunities to support points 1 and 2. And that's all facilitated through our PIA partner. So these are lines of efforts. So within persistent tech scanning, it's really that education, being present. If I have a program office that says, hey, I've got a need for natural language processing, I can then take that, we can connect it through our PIA partner to these non-traditional ecosystems, and then get a list back. Then through some due diligence via ONR or DIU, we can then vet some of those and pass that back in a much more effective way. Often, at Keyport or Warfare Centers, our engineers are doing some of that market research themselves, or trying to Google and find the best. Reaching out to the manufacturing community. Often entrepreneurs need to connect or have to build things. And so being able to connect and tie together through the MEPs to the manufacturing community to help them find safe ways that protects their IP to manufacture their products and reach scale is a really important kind of aspect to these linkages. And of course, academia. I talked about the National Security Innovation Lab. That's the warfighter integration piece, and really trying to answer the mail on that internal facing side of the tech bridge and the work we do. And then strategic engagement. So hosting the Washington Military Alliance meetings there, hosting VIPs, hosting congressionals, things like that, to kind of bring them up to speed. So the PIA partner can speak to them, venture capital community can speak to them. You heard this morning, Rich talked about the Silicon Valley Defense Group. So they work with venture capital around the country, particularly in Silicon Valley, but we're working to get them introduced and connected to our venture capital community up in the Northwest. And Madrona, for example, has $2 billion under management. We have several others with hundreds of millions under management. So there's a significant VC presence that is not really aware of defense or the concerns that we have around different sources of capital. And so the goal is that we kind of produce opportunities at the right time. So when we're working with these startups, we're talking to these founders, we want them to kind of see the opportunities at the right time, the right opportunity at the right time. And so they have these risks. As they're going through friends and family round, as they're going through seed and Series A, that easy access to capital, if they take the wrong make the wrong choice, they will never work with the US government again, which to our detriment. And so we want to be able to, talk to them kind of at that earliest stage at the friends and family round, offer them the opportunities to jump into the SIBR and SCTR programs, connect them to the resources like PTAC or small business development centers or some of the other tools that are out there from the other agencies. They provide education to help them get through these processes. Educating them on DoD institutes and the opportunity to have a safe space to work with large primes. So the ARM Institute in Pittsburgh, for example, or Chicago. There's these DoD institutes, everybody's pretty familiar, and there's consortiums. Pretty easy for founders to join these consortiums, relatively low cost, and they can apply for RFPs in partnership with companies like Siemens or Raytheon or whatnot. And it's a safe space for them to kind of get into the defense market and learn more about it. As they get farther up the food chain, maybe other transaction authorities joining a consortium and starting to compete. So it's really about helping insert the right knowledge at the right time as they're going through their growth cycle, so that even though they're hyper-focused on their commercial market, they remain open to working with us when they're ready to reach that point. Because we're not, and it's really key, I think, we understand we are not the initial market for most founders. They're not going to come find, a program of record, as we talked about this morning, or some other easy access to funding to give them $1 million for their back of napkin idea, which we get a lot. I have a lot of founders like, I've got an idea for a glider on the moon. I need $1 million to get a prototype though. I'm like, probably not going to be us. So that's really the opportunity. Then here's the partners. So we've got, kind of a whole host of partners from local government, Washington State Department of Commerce. They have a military sector lead that's very focused on kind of helping build out this effort. Local economic development councils, the professional technical and assistance centers that are funded by DLA. So definitely, if you're not working with them, make sure you do. National security partners. We just had a call with Army Futures Command. They're briefing General Murray on this tomorrow. There's a need to not only leverage the Northwest ecosystem, but sort of help consolidate some of these efforts across the other ecosystems that are across the country. And so, Army Futures Command, Pacific Northwest, we've got 2 folks in Washington State from DIU, as well as, Ensign being president full-time. So we're growing this sort of participation as a joint ecosystem, bringing our sailors, Marines, soldiers, airmen together to be able to work together to share ideas, a lot of common problems across all the services. In Washington State, we have the largest super base, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Air Force and Army, plus Olympic Peninsula and Kitsap County, 3 huge Navy bases. 60% of employment for that county is Navy, and then obviously Whidbey and Everett. Everett's going to be growing significantly. I guess they're adding 12 new frigates up to the Northwest when they come online. So we're going to have a lot of opportunities for sailors and Marines to participate. And then industry, obviously, and then academia. So we have quite a few partners that are pretty passionate about what we're doing, creating this space, this collaborative sort of ecosystem to work together, find new opportunities, and help educate the startups and touch those non-traditionals that we have been tasked. And that's been part of our initial charter, was touching these non-traditional partners that don't normally work with the Department of Defense, work with the Department of Navy, and find ways to kind of insert at the right time and build that relationship over time and give them the right information at the right time. So kind of the 3 lines of effort. I wanted to take more time for questions, but kind of go back or talk about opportunities for, I can go in the backup slides or things like that. So that's a quick overview. It's really focused on, I wanted to be to the point, maybe give time for networking too, but it's very different than a lot of the other efforts. So I thought it was important to kind of share what we're doing and create an opportunity for discussion. Please.
Nino Arcantonio. Oh, Nino. Hello. DTIP. Yeah, we kind of did the same thing at the policy through, for the last 3 or 4 years, agility, bringing in non-traditional partners. I was asking the question of, is the challenge for you guys specifically to expand strategic partnerships to senior leadership, which we have this wonderful platform, or is it finding more non-traditional partners?
Probably both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we can talk, and this is awesome.
Yeah, so as line of effort, kind of number 3. So we envision even a series of educational quarterlies. So we want to bring the mayor of Joint Base Lewis McChord, the commanding general of the units, our Navy Region Northwest, maybe the senior COs, XOs, or some of the triads of local units, in a quarterly sort of executive education opportunity. So we want to have them sit down and learn, hey, what's the impact of AI/ML? We're going to bring in some of the experts from Amazon, some of the experts from Microsoft, startups, and some academia folks, and do a roundtable. What's the impacts on your units? What's the impact? It's very difficult when you're in leadership to take the time to sit down and understand kind of the emerging technology and the impacts. So we have a dearth. So that's an education and kind of bringing people together, senior leaders, is really important.
Yeah. So what we've been able to build over the last 3 or 4 years is about 900 senior executives we have these virtual things up in the Pentagon, and it will be great to collaborate and expand this team of team concept with naval agility.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And then the other aspect with industry. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's always the challenge of finding more partners.
Right. Absolutely.
With regard to the IC community, do you guys support small businesses with accelerating security clearances, or how do you handle any of that?
Unfortunately not. So it's really, again, kind of about building the relationship and then they're going to have to go through that process. But at least we're touching them from day one, or as friends and family around, and kind of working with them. Hey, this is what to expect. We're really focused on dual use technologies, startups and small business that are already pursuing a commercial market, for which there'll likely be opportunities for capital from venture or angel networks. So they're not reliant on us for funding, because that's usually not a technology that we're in a position to fund or 100%. And so really focused on dual use. So it's really about contact early and often, or getting referrals from the venture community or the angel investor community locally that say, hey, I've got this startup. They're doing great, good traction. I see an application for this technology, refer them to you, and then where do they get started? And that's day one question of like, we'll walk over here, we'll help you figure out where, which program office, which ONR BAA to look at, which SIBR you should be looking at, which OTA consortium to look at, kind of all in one place. Should just turn on.
There we go. So Johannes, you talked about warfighters coming into the MAC to do agile training, innovation training. Can you talk about the transit times from the various military installations?
Yep, absolutely.
And is that a barrier?
Yeah, yes, it is. And so we'll have to be very strategic in kind of the events that we host there. So Joint Base Lewis McChord is without traffic, roughly 45 minutes, with traffic, an hour and a half. So it is a major barrier. Same for Woodby coming from North Washington. Everett's, much closer. Bremerton and the Kitsap Peninsula are just an hour away for Bangor, Keyport, PSNS. So that less of an issue. So there will be sort of hub and spoke model. So we've got partners with an innovation cluster on maritime technology called Maritime Blue. They have an innovation space in Fisherman's Terminal. They've got innovation space up in Snohomish, which is much closer to Woodby and Everett. And sort of through a series of, and we have got the AV within these spaces to be able to connect to each other. So they'll be able to be sort of these remote outposts, digital connection, live hybrid events, which fortunately in the last year we've really gotten much better at. And so there's going to be some aspects where like we need people to come and they'll take a day, they'll figure out the transportation. We've already had some of the units at Joint Base Lewis before, like, hey, once a year, twice a year, we can definitely support getting a bus, bringing everybody up, as long as we plan it and coordinate it. But a lot of the other times will definitely have to be sort of a hybrid virtual, or we'll go to them if it's, especially if it's a soft group or something like that, we need to do it on base and then help translate kind of to a distro version. Oh.
Yes.
You can go next. Oh.
So in the program, you talk a little bit about partnering with the Office of Secretary of Defense, R&E. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's specifically Ensign. Ensign has a national presence. Are you familiar with Ensign? Okay, perfect. So they're part of DIU. They're an important partner, actually, to a lot of the tech bridges. Ensign, National Security Innovation Network, they're under R&E. They have a whole, 25 different programs that support problem curation for warfighters, industry days. They support prize challenges for each region. And I think they're broken up like the FEMA sectors all across the country. I think they pretty much overlap. And so there's a regional director with their own budget and a university liaison in each district or sector across the country. And their job is to enable innovation kind of through universities, through kind of early stage startups, stuff like that, within each of those regions. And then they work with the military on each of the bases within that region to support innovation websites, problem curation events. It could be training, like I said, for design thinking, very similar to our Center for Adaptive Warfighting. And so there's a lot of different programs that they have fully funded each year, and then it's up to each kind of service to reach out to them and say, hey, these are our demand signals, and this is where you can help. So this Mission Acceleration Center, actually, a lot of the programming will be provided by or supported by Ensign in the Pacific Northwest, so we're not reinventing the wheel, as they do this stuff pretty well. Does that answer your question? Greg?
Yes. So Johansson, so beside the venture capitalist upstairs from there, do you have, is part of your strategy then to interface with some of these larger industry consortiums
So one touch point gets you maybe thousands of industry partners that would be potential, players in your consortium.
Absolutely. Yep. And so we have a lot of industry consortiums across Washington State, especially in aerospace, given Boeing. We also have a really strong space ecosystem. So we have the headquarters of Blue Origin, as well as the rocket headquarters for SpaceX, and then several other folks from Lockheed and Boeing in the space world. So in those industry consortiums, National Center for Manufacturing Sciences, being able to come and participate in the space to be that network of networks, we want to be able to pulse those networks when we have a demand signal coming from a program office, coming from industry partner, coming from the state of Washington or other states surrounding, and quickly kind of, hey, you need to talk to these three folks, these three folks, these three folks. And that's part of it, is really being able to pulse that network as quickly as possible so we're not sitting there on Google trying to figure it out. So yeah, the industry consortiums will be extremely important. Plus, there's a whole different, pot of money. There's a whole different access to the resources. I mean, you guys obviously have, significant resources. The DoD already funds you to do work. Same for the aerospace industry. They've got a lot of programs to reach out and support local, entrepreneurs or small business and supply chain kind of connections, finding their secondary, tertiary suppliers. So we want to be able to pull in those resources and centralize them. Absolutely. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
It's actually pretty easy to get onto the InSync website, go in, and there's a partner up, and you can see they do a fantastic job accessing all the sort of problems and challenges across all the organizations in the DoD, which is really fantastic. So just adding on to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the nice thing too is that, my focus obviously is and it started with the TechBridge slide, because I do a lot of other work specific to the Navy. This is simply one tool that helps us to consolidate what other services are doing in one space, physical manifestation of that partnership, and makes it easier to consolidate resources and humans. We just had a call with Army Futures Command. I mean, if they send 2 folks up, we've got a meeting with SpaceWorks on Monday. If it becomes a space where you can activate all of these different groups, AppWorks, makes it that one-stop shop. It's fantastically simpler for these non-traditionals. Where do I start? I start there. That's it. I'm going to find all the partners and resources and tools I need to access this. And so I pull what I need out of that, and we fund our part for the TechBridge, and then pull that back into the Navy to solve the problems that I'm getting from our ecosystem, from our program offices, from our engineers at Keyport, and things like that. So we've had some other types of wins, through the TechBridge, like I said, through the MASC effort and the partnerships that came from that, thanks to the connections that we've made through NavalX, as well as we ran a naval innovation adoption process using a new set of non-FAR tools that we haven't used at Keyport before. We actually reduced our contract time for a prototype by 50%, which was pretty remarkable. And that was thanks to the education and connections that we make to organizations that are already being successful at that. So that's part of the TechBridge aspect. And so the MAC is just one piece that helps me amplify and grow the work that we're already doing.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to make it out there on Sunday, Johannes. That's a lot of travel for me. I've been on travel 2 weeks already, and I'm old.
I'm going from here too, Monday.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you very much, Johannes. I told y'all it would be exciting. Now, part of the exciting part too here is that we have a lot of our tech transfer officers with us today. We got one from NIWC PAC. Isn't Alan a tech transfer guy? Yeah. All right. We've got Alan from Port Hueneme. We've got Rick Tarr from NOC AD. Troy, are you a T2 person? No? Jennifer Stewart. She's not here though. Yeah. So be sure to talk with them. And that's specifically for our Don workforce. For our Don workforce folks, talk with them so we can talk, so you can learn more about PIAs, TIAs, OTAs, CRADAs, all those kind of good things. Now, the industry base and academia, you would be interested in promoting for folks like me, just a regular proletariat kind of worker at a warfare center, to know who those folks are so they can help us with that process in getting a CRADA and working an OTA in working some sort of non-FAR based strategy with everybody. So we're going to shut down over here, and I look next door, and then where it's getting a little bit warm over there, but is a warfare center that I did not know exist, and it's from the Port Hueneme area. It's the NAVFAC, Navy Facilities, the XWIC.
Welcome back, everybody. Hello, virtual audience. And so I want to, I hope Ling and her team don't get mad at me because I'm going to throw this in here. We actually have in the lab the Marine Makers course going on, and there's 8 Marines from literally all over the country that are in 4 days going to make an autonomous pack robot to carry their stuff. It's going to follow them around. It can carry like more than 80 pounds, and literally like from all over the country, they're here. And why this is so significant is that they're learning how to innovate in the field with things that they have and learning these technologies. A big thing that our PIA partner, one of Naval X's PIA partners, Building Momentum, is doing like for the Marines. So you guys can go in the shop and check it out. And if they give me permission, I'll go live with you tomorrow at lunchtime, and I'll take the live audience in the shop. But right now we have Mark Thompson. So we had a Johnson earlier. We got Mark Thompson from NAVFAC. So I'm going to read this because I never say it right. Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Commands Engineering and Expeditionary Warfare Center. XWIC is what they call them. So Mark is going to give you a presentation. You can take it away. Thank you.
Testing 1. Is it working? Cool. Yeah, so my name is Mark Thompson. I recently onboarded in July as the ORDA, the Office of Research and Technology Applications Manager for NAVFAC XWIC. So if you don't know what an ORDA is, we're the T2 person, the one who's working with private industry, working with academia to try and ultimately transition civilian tech to the government and the other way around as well. So the purpose of this presentation is we are a fairly new warfare center, and we're less well known than the NAVCs and the NAV Air groups that are out there. And I came from working with Alan Yeager at Port Hueneme Division, so I'm expecting a lot of heckling from the front row. But a lot of tech was coming across our Warfare Center at Port Hueneme Division that we didn't really have a home for. It doesn't really fit into the mission set of Port Hueneme Division, and we just didn't really know about NAVFAC XWIC. NAVFAC, you probably know, they're the ones that are going to fix your AC and pave your sidewalks and paint lines in the road. They're doing all the public utilities, infrastructure type stuff on base. Yes, and we are still that, but there's the XWIC side, which we'll get into, is kind of the new latest and greatest that NAVFAC has to offer that we're trying to educate the rest of the workforce on to try and collaborate and share some of our resources. And see, oh, there we go. So I wanted to get in first our points of contact and chain of command. And I want to start with this because as I was listening to the panel this morning, 2 things came to mind. First, the last time I was in a room with so many lieutenant colonels, I thought I was going to lose a couple stripes. But the second thing is they brought up the coalition of the willing. And it's an expression I haven't heard before. But as I am showing our chain of command, they are an extremely supportive commanding officer and technical director when it comes to T2 efforts, tech transfer efforts. Our new captain, Captain Scott Raymond, just onboarded, I think a few days after I did, and it's kind of getting his feet under him. And myself and our council were briefing on our current T2 efforts, not knowing how it would go. He never came from a federal lab before. So we're like, oh, is this going to be kind of a make or break time for us? And he couldn't be more enthusiastic and supportive. So as we're going to get into kind of aligning, NAVFAC XWIC has begun to align with the Ventura Tech Bridge, and we have a very supportive command of that, which we're very fortunate and pleased to have. Our makeup, we're a very small group, which might be another reason why just less people have heard of us. We're just over 1,200 folks. A little more than half of that are going to be your technical staff, engineers, active and reserve military as well. But we have a wide variety of civil, mechanical engineers, computer scientists, and the admin and support staff that would go along with those. So we're fairly diverse, as we're going to see in our next couple of slides. We're not focused on one particular thing. It's anything kind of land-based Navy is our bread and butter. So it's a pretty diverse skill set that we have a fairly small workforce to support. So it's a very dynamic workplace, and every time we sit down with the technical director, it's kind of surprising to see there's another project that I had no clue we were involved in, so it's exciting to see. Some of our recent history, we only became a warfare center in 2012, so we're fairly new on that front, and also as of 2017, an STRL, so a Science and Technology Reinvention Laboratory. And with those designations, get a lot of the T2 authorities that the other warfare centers have already been working with, in addition to the ability to do your 219 NICE projects, which are a great mechanism for T2 efforts as well. So this is our current breakdown. We recently reorganized. We were 5 departments that I'm also going to show as kind of a good breakdown of the different skill sets we have. But this is our organization as of now. So we have an expeditionary department, oceans department, and a shore department. So we simplified it a little bit. All of the business support, technical support is going into shore facilities. And the whole idea of this organization is to simplify how we go from bases to places. So bases, that's kind of the NAVFAC that who's repairing your buildings and new construction on base. But then we go over to places, all the expeditionary operations where we're getting CBs on a ship, we're sending them ashore saying, hey, land here, build a base here, ready, go. And all of the support that is required and equipment required to make that kind of operation happen is also NAVFAC XWIC, which is kind of the new side of NAVFAC. So I'm going to highlight a couple of these. I know they're hard to see, so I'm going to highlight one of each to show. Yeah, here we go. So one of the unique facilities on the shore side is the microgrid system. So we have a microgrid test bed, and the team there that you see pictured, the whole idea is power and energy resiliency. California especially, we're always going out of power for wildfires. So our bases want to be able to support themselves in the event of any sort of outage, but also getting to expeditionary. We can send generators and fuel forward, but there's a lot of logistics training that goes along with that as well. So something like a microgrid they're standing in a shipping container and it's portable. So if you can send that forward with your expeditionary operations, will again increase the energy resiliency in a forward deployed environment. This team also, they're doing a really great job. There's a lot of our T2 partnering agreements around the microgrid system, and that they're trying to not be in their little rabbit hole, and they're training Army and Navy and also academic folks that coming from different universities and companies are training on this system to learn how we can improve and continually improve the microgrid system for forward deployed naval forces. Another unique capability that we have is the XWIC dive locker. So the CBs, which are also on the base at Port Hueneme, the CBs do have dive capabilities through their underwater construction teams. They're a unit that can be forward deployed. They're doing construction, demolitions underwater. XWIC has its own dive group for the whole purpose of doing RDT&E for stuff underwater. The exercise that we have up on top here, they just did through the Coastal Trident Antex exercise that Alan briefed. And you see there's Coast Guard divers taking the gear off of Navy divers. And right behind them, there's sheriffs and police divers. So everyone met up together, and each dive, they went through a different organization's process, checking their equipment. What stuff are you using? What works? What doesn't work? So all of these local organizations, generally Ventura and LA County, were able to all improve their equipment and their processes by coming together and doing these kinds of events. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is through the eagerness that the CO and TD are pushing to the workforce, they're not just diving with their own folks, that they're getting involved with events like Coastal Trident, getting involved with the Tech Bridge, see who else is out there who has solutions to our problems and who can we help with our solutions. Another experiment. So these are all ones that have happened just since I onboarded in July. So these are all recent projects. And this one, for the expeditionary side, as troops are landing on foreign shores, like we've all seen, the videos of D-Day, all the ships going forward and landing craft dropping troops. That's great for the initial waves. If you want to sustain that, you need piers and wharves and cranes and all that infrastructure to offload that heavy cargo and get a large amount of men and material ashore. So we have these experts in pier construction, pier damage assessments, And an ONR funded project called the Naviator, through a civilian company, developed a drone that can fly, land in the water, drive underwater, do a visual or sonar scan of a pier structure, come back to the surface, take off, and come back to where it started. So we have the experts and the expertise to help this company develop their technology. And they were able to work through a lot in the week that they were here. And it's either next week or this week or next week, they're doing another week-long experiment as well to continue developing this. This is just some of our T2 agreements that we have. We are a decent magnet, I would say, for academic institutions in our area. Most notably, Cal Lutheran and Cal State Channel Islands are some of our closer organizations. We also have University of Austin is working on some of our advanced concrete technologies. I want to highlight also the EDC is one of our main partnership intermediaries, and that's how we do things like the innovation discovery events when we're trying to license some of our intellectual property. So they're very helpful for that. And I'm going to highlight a few times, but FathomWorks in the Port of Hueneme is where the Ventura Tech Bridge is located. So they are a very strong partner that we're in the process right now of signing our MOUs to get plugged into there, that the command really couldn't be more supportive of. I came from Port Hueneme Division, NAVC, and the day I checked in, our CO said, "Oh, you're the FathomWorks guy, you're the Tech Bridge guy." He's like, "How do we play? How do we get involved? How do we get our workforce over there?" Which is very encouraging for us to see. So some of our unique facilities, again, it's pretty diverse. We have a wide variety of mission sets at XWIC. So you've heard of the Motor Vessel Independence before. It's used quite a bit through Coastal Trident. It was designed to recover the solid rocket boosters for the shuttle program. And now it's just there's a crew, civilian contract crew that is very eager to support kind of any project you have. We're flying drones off of it, we're dropping stuff into the water, we've had divers off of it. Anything you need to get in a maritime environment, they are very eager to support. We have shallow and deep water simulation facilities. So if something's not quite ready to get in an actual maritime, ocean environment, and it can also be expensive to be taking ship crews and the crane operators on the ships, that can all add up for something that's maybe a lower TRL and you want to see if it works. So what we have is the deep water simulation tank, which right now it's an asset that we could potentially use for one of our CRADAs, where a company is developing basically an underwater Roomba. So they put this battery docking station, and if you need to do persistent surveillance or long-term ocean surveys, this drone can basically plug in at this docking station underwater, recharge, and then continue its mission, and you only have to recover it, in a matter of weeks instead of every couple hours or every couple days, which substantially would add to your costs. So this would be another asset that we could use to test a device like that. The WETS facility is a wave energy test site we have off the coast of Hawaii, where we can have kind of modular systems to try, plug and play what works, what doesn't work. Would wave energy work for an expeditionary environment, or is it something we can just say put off the shore of, Point Magoo, Camp Pendleton, all those facilities that have oceanfront property that we could be powering for, again, higher energy resiliency. Chem and bio labs, we're also the POL subject matter experts, so petroleum, oils, and lubricants. This is where they're going to be developed from, our scientists in the labs there. So we have those facilities to continually improve those sorts of assets. Another thing I wanted to highlight, we've already touched on the microgrid testbed, but also the control system testbed. So yes, we're focused on facilities, but cybersecurity never goes away. We're trying to find ways to reduce facilities costs. Through HVAC systems, and just like the controls that you have on the wall, it's the Navy version of a smart home for a base as a whole. So how do we plug those systems in? How do we try new technologies? How do we integrate new tech that is being developed for a Navy application to reduce our costs? So it's a great cyber kind of play center for them to make digital twins of naval facilities and see what's going to work best for us. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, and this is our old department makeup, and I wanted to just throw this in there. It may be a little hard to see, but just so I can highlight some of the key points that these old departments were working on. through our reorganization, we did not cut it. We didn't cut programs. We didn't ditch any projects. It's just administratively, reorganized. So I wanted to touch on these so you can see what's going on. We click one more time, please. So a few things that I wanted to highlight. Specialized fleet mooring. I personally never gave any thought to moorings. You have a boat, you tie it up, you'll drop an anchor, and I never really thought much past that. And I've learned a lot in the last couple months of how much science goes into what seems like a very simple operation. And the latest IP that we're actually running through council now is an improved mooring device, which was kind of surprising to see the diversity of what the workforce is doing. On the expeditionary side, infantry gear. So I put Lost and Afraid here in reference to a company that approached NAVC saying, I have this wearable gear that I think would be great for the Navy to test. And on the NAVC side, we're like, okay, great. I'm glad you're developing this tech and we don't want your tech to die, but it's just not in the realm of what we do. And we wouldn't be able to, say task someone in our workforce to be able to work on a project like that if it's not in our core mission set. So we're able to kind of make that connection, which is great because NAVFAC XWIC has programs to develop gear for the Navy and the Marine Corps, and we're able to pair this company up, and we're looking at doing a CRADA with them to continue developing some of their equipment. On the capital improvements, which is now on the shore side, security engineering. So all the physical security measures you see on base, yes, there's security guards that are contracted, but all of the physical barriers, bastions, gates, guardrails, and physical security measures are developed and placed and maintained by NAVFAC. So there's a large amount of subject matter experts in that field that we can now plug into, now that we know that they're there, can plug into the Coastal Trident and Antex Events focused on port and maritime security. The DoD LOCKS program, again, something that I hadn't previously given much thought to, but all of your safes, your anything on a DoD facility, your secure rooms, that's a program within NAVFAC XWIC, and there's some more IP that came out of that program. Folks developing a modular system that they can retrofit old safe doors to now improve the facility safety, facility security by this new technology. And we were able to do that with one of our last IDEs, Innovation Discovery Events, where we got a bunch of experts together in a variety of fields in the county and across the country saying, hey, here's some new DoD tech, kind of who's interested. We had another company who came to NAVC, another one that's kind of Lost and Afraid. Great tech, but we didn't have a great fit for them. And they were making water from air. It was a kind of refrigerator-sized unit, and they can pull just from the humidity and make potable water. Great technology, less in the scope of what NAVC Port Hueneme Division was doing as in-service engineering focus. So now we have these connections, and we know some folks that might be a little bit more interested and aligned with what they're doing. So by just getting our word out, which was the whole point of me being here, getting our word out, knowing where we could better tie in some tech instead of kind of sending them away to die, and we're going to lose that advantage. And then also subject matter experts for a tech scan. So NavAir conducted a tech scan, trying to find ways to track mammals, marine mammals. So obviously when we're doing testing and operations, we don't want to be running into whales when at all possible. So we did a tech scan to see what's already out there. And right down the road, we didn't realize there are folks that do this, that focus on marine mammals. So again, just kind of getting our word out of seeing what our workforce does, we're hoping would add a lot of value in both directions. See if this works. Oh, here we go. Our STEM program, I think it's a fairly robust STEM program for the size of organization that we are. Karina Reeves, if you talk to her, if you're not excited about STEM, you will be shortly after talking to her. She's a great STEM coordinator, and we have great relationships with University of California. Santa Barbara is, I think, one of our probably most involved academic partners. And through them, we have a lot of internship programs that we get a fair amount of folks through. Their pipelines projects where they're actually developing IP, or they came up with some IP throughout the course of their internship. And also the Sea Glide, Sea Perch competitions where we bring in students. They are coding for underwater ROVs. We'll put them in the test tank, whether that be at the FathomWorks Ventura Tech Bridge or some of the local schools. So we're fairly well plugged into our local academic community as well. Okay, and this is every meeting that we have, our CO and our TD, this is what they want to reinforce. This is what they see as our main priorities moving forward. This is where XWIC's focus will be. And obviously, there's a lot of sub-bullets that can go into each of these points. But cybersecurity, a lot of that work is being done by our control systems testbed, energy efficiency, climate change, and distributed military operations, and the expeditionary advanced bases. Moving forward, as we're leaving the Middle East and leaving long desert-based operations, we're getting folks back on ships, we're sending them across the world, and they need to be able to sustain whatever it is that they're doing wherever they are. And that comes into facilities. Again, it's not always the guys that are just paving the road on base, but all of the expeditionary basing is XWIC as well. And there's a lot of focus as we're shifting back to a maritime-focused Navy as we're getting, again, less land-based. This is just our full list of technical capabilities that we're waterfront, undersea, and on the shore. Before I had joined XWIC, I had a pretty ignorant view of what they did, and they're just down the road. The fact that everything undersea, I would just, it's NIWC, and that's, I would go to that point of contact. So I think there's a lot of potential points for collaboration between the warfare centers once we all know what we're doing. Energy technology, environmental restoration, and compliance. We have folks that are doing research projects and surveys, kind of like the Marine Mammal Program. If we're going to be building something on the shoreline, we can't just build. There's environmental surveys that have to go into it. What kind of contaminants are we going to put out? Are we going to endanger any wildlife? And we have a whole team committed to just that. And then, of course, expeditionary operations and contingency basing as we're moving forward kind of into the new era of the Navy as well. And the last thing I want to hit on, because it's the one I'm most excited about, having come from working at FathomWorks, as we're signing our MOUs to get plugged in, I think as we're growing our network, as XWIC gets the word out there and we're growing our connections, I think we all stand to benefit quite a bit from collaborating with XWIC. I know there's a lot of expertise in the room. I met some of you at the Keyport training 2 years ago, and it was inspiring to see how much knowledge is out there from someone who's on the newer side like myself. So I'm really looking forward to being able to plug into the TechBridge network and Naval X. I think XWIC, I know, has a lot to gain from your experience, and hopefully vice versa as well. So these are all pictures just from things that XWIC has been doing since I came on board, which hasn't been that long. So there's a lot of kinetic things going on. We have a very excited command who's very eager to get plugged into T2 efforts, work more with industry, work more with academia, which I think we couldn't really ask for more as a warfare center. So with that's all I have, and I'd be happy to field any questions. Yes, sir.
Understanding what's going on, so that's something that, of course, through Naval Labs is something that's very important.
Yes, sir.
Of course, that's something that you're always looking at to improve, right? Or maybe sharing in between, and I see that you guys bring a lot of technologies as well, which is like maybe this other center could use that.
Right. So that's by joining the Naval X system. We're not just trying to come play in the lab itself, but like our unique capabilities slide. Hey, we're bringing these capabilities to Naval X, to the other warfare centers, that if that's something you need to test, don't go spend money somewhere else. Don't go try and build the thing yourself on your base. Talk to us. That's what we're trying to encourage by saying what our capabilities are, both through experience and personnel and also through our facilities. Yeah.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
So it seems like expeditionary warfare and NAVFAC seems like they're closely related. So how do you segregate between the technology or that you're trying to establish? Seems like a lot of the focus has been on the NAVFAC capability stuff and less on the expeditionary part. So can you speak a little bit to that? I don't know.
Sure.
It seems like they don't really connect that well, but I don't know.
Okay.
Seems like all two different missions.
I think I got your question. So NAVFAC we're the only warfare center associated with NAVFAC. There are NAVFACs all over the country, as there are NAVCs, except XWIC is the only warfare center. So the XWIC part is the warfare center focused on the expeditionary side. But our expeditionary element is related to facilities, which is why we have the control systems test bed. They're out there, they can integrate with private companies and do all this tech transfer stuff, but only as it relates to facilities. So we're not doing, if we're doing AI, it's relating to facilities. If we're doing, dive operations, we're not doing, we're not the SOCOM looking for, the latest and greatest stuff for the SEALs to do. We're not making submarines, but it's construction related diving. Does that answer your question? Kind of. Yeah, yes. Okay. So it's expeditionary warfare as it relates to facilities. But we also are like the MRAP program, the mine resistant vehicles and personal gear is also included in that, as they are expeditionary folks going forward. Disclosure, I'm learning a lot about this group, and I was a Marine, and seeing the work that they do and that they're working with Seabees, which were obviously very closely related. I'm learning more and more about this group, and it's exciting to see what they have to offer. And the different fields that they work in. So I could probably give you a better answer. I'd be happy to talk to you offline. But yes, it's the forward-looking arm as it relates to generally facilities. Yes. Anybody else? Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, in about 4 more minutes, we're going to return to the global stage for the last presentation of the day. Sorry, virtual audience, but afterwards, we're going to have a live band. And we're going to have a little social networking hour after this. So if you guys want to come in person from social media, just join us. Join us and get the address offline. I'm not telling you. Could be spies on the line.
I think this is the last presentation of the day. So we're going to anchor with a virtual presentation. So we've got folks down in Charleston, South Carolina. This is where our Palmetto Tech Bridge is, down in Charleston. And on the map, this is where I'm from, Naval Atlantic. On the map, it's this red dot right here. Funny, right? Okay, down in Charleston, South Carolina, we've got Holly Leonard, who'll be coming up on the scene pretty soon. But what she's going to talk about is some human-centered design work that she's been doing. She did a NICE proposal, and she'll talk about this. You've heard us talk about NICE. She actually did a proposal for this. But how it relates to what we're doing here at Naval X is, I don't know if you've talked with or seen Mike Lavery running around. Mike was here. He may have gone. I don't know. But Mike runs the CAW, the Center for Adaptive Warfighting. And in the CAW, you learn about how to do everything from Scrum, and you get a military Scrum Master. And there's Holly. Hi, Holly. We'll be right with you. I'm doing a little intro for you. A Scrum Master class, and then also Human-Centered Design class of how to have people think better or think about and then be able to articulate better their challenges. So when it comes to discussions with requirements, how we get, oh, we just want to be able to do blah, blah, blah. Well, no longer are we having that, right? I think the CAW has trained somewhere near 4,000 to 5,000 Marines in this capability. Is that right, Troy? Yeah, right? Like, that's a lot of Marines. There should be articulation of requirements across the board. And we should be using those Marines a lot more to run these classes and teach these tools of the trade of the Luma and I'm forgetting the others. It's getting late in the day. But I actually asked Holly to be here. I think what she's doing is fantastic, and this will help our warfare centers better articulate the needs. The needs of what? When we write our technical requirements in our request for proposals from industry. That's what we're looking for. So Holly, I want to turn it over to you, ma'am, and there will be maybe some time for questions. So once you come off mute, the floor will be yours. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. Hopefully everybody can hear me. As Steve mentioned, I am at NIWC Atlantic, and I've been working through a nice proposal around user-centered design, and I just kind of wanted to talk about our journey here through the last fiscal year as we've kind of walked through this. So next slide, please. I can't see the slide, so hopefully we're in sync. So really, this brief's really about our journey on this user-centered design path. Like, first thing we're going to kind of talk about right now is what is user-centered design, because I know, when I started, I was like, I think I know what that is, but do I really? And then why are we on this journey, and why does it matter? And then basically, what was our plan here at NIWC Atlantic as we for this fiscal year and even beyond this fiscal year as we continue down this path. So next slide. Okay, so we're just going to I'm going to do a brief user-centered design overview, just, in case folks aren't as familiar with it. So next slide. So what is user-centered design? It's really like trying to get those end users of your systems, of your processes, involved in the design, the building, the development, and the entire life cycle from start to finish, and just having those frequent, interactive, iterative sessions on getting their feedback so you can better understand their needs, so you can better solve their problems. So really, it's all users, all stakeholders, because each group has a different perspective of things you need to consider as you're designing solutions for them. It's focusing on their needs to solve their problems. And you really do need them involved in the entire process, not just at the end after it goes live to say, hey, look what we built, does it meet your needs? Because you really want to know what their needs were up front when you're designing it, and even during the build cycle. So you can have those, like, think Agile, where you have those demonstrations so you can get that feedback, so you have less rework going down the pipe. And even in testing, you want their feedback there as well to make sure you're really focused on what they need. And while the premise seems really obvious and really simple, yes, we want our users involved. Yes, we do. I found that, user-centered design is sometimes more art than science, and getting those needs pulled out of your stakeholders, because sometimes it's really about, the facilitation and pulling that information out, because not everybody really wants to speak up sometimes. So you kind of want to make sure you have all their voices considered. So next, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper look into what it is. So next slide, please. So design thinking, when we hear that, it's really kind of in 5 stages. The first one is really that you're empathizing, you're doing some research, you're getting to know that audience, you're discovering their pain points, their challenges. And it helps you to understand so you can solve the underlying issues, not just address the symptoms and band-aid a solution, right? You really want to fix that root cause. You want to get down to the nitty-gritty of what really their challenge is. And then from there, you kind of go into the define stage, which is where you're observing problems, you're understanding their needs, you're understanding what capabilities they currently have, and getting an understanding of kind of what they need and where to go. And from there, you're going to ideate. You're going to generate those ideas. You're going to think about not just, what can solve the problem, but what things are needed to support it. What things influence the problem? Are there dependencies? That's where those ideation things come in. And then eventually, right, we're going to get to that prototype stage where we are representing those ideas that we've worked through as a functional product, and then test so we can get that feedback. But as you see, it's an iterative cycle, so it never ends, right? We're going to learn from our tests, and then we're going to go back through it and keep going until we get to the end to make that solution what we need it to be. So next slide, please. And then if you kind of think about design thinking from what they call the double diamond, right? You start with your problem there at the far left, and you're going to have, and this double diamond is broken up into two phases, the learning phase and then the creating phase. So during the learning phase, you're going to start with that problem. And as you discover, you go through that, you're going to diverge and you're going to have some divergent thinking. So you're going to start generating lots of ideas, more ideas during that phase. But then as those ideas will start to converge on possible solutions as you define that solution space. And then in the creating phase, as you start to design the solution, you'll diverge again by generating some ideas about how that's going to work. And then you'll continue through design and build, and then it'll converge into that final solution there at the end. So really, it's like a two-phase, broad ideas, and then you kind of neck it back down, and then you go back up, and then you neck it back down till you get to that, final thing where you have the problem on one end and you've come up with a solution on the other. So on the next slide, we're going to look at, this is just a smattering of different user-centered design methods that are out there. You may have used some. I know I've used a couple. And then, of course, there are a whole lot more out there. And then the next couple slides, we're going to kind of go through some that I've used in my own experience working at NIWC-LANT. I'm a supervisor, and I've been a scrum master in our software development branch. I've also worked in the command information office doing process and requirements. So I've kind of learned and used these methods in my day-to-day. So if we move on to the next slide, this is just an idea that we've used in our command when we've developed new tools, new processes, we've rolled it out to the command, and then we do retrospectives with various stakeholder groups to get their feedback. And one way is Rose Thorn Bud. So, and it's kind of like a retrospective in an agile, at the end of an agile sprint, right? What's going well, the positive, that would be your rose. What's not going well, that's that thorn and that negative. And then what's an opportunity? What's a new insight? What's something we should look into? And that's kind of those greens. So getting people to generate those ideas. And usually when we're in the office, right, it's all Post-it notes, hence the little squares everywhere. But then the next thing would be to start looking at the ideas that were generated, whether they were positive, negative, or even an opportunity, and start clustering those together to start seeing those patterns and relationships. Start pulling things together, see if you can make relationships out of it. And then from my perspective, when we've done this with process rollouts or tool rollouts at our command at NIWC-LANT, we would take these groupings that we devised in our affinity clustering. And then when we give each one of those stakeholders, some of those stakeholders, we would give them all a set number of votes and say, which ones are the most important to you? Which ones should we work on next? And that's kind of that visualize the vote, where you go and everybody gets a vote. They could put all their votes on one if they think it's super important, or they can spread them out. But it's a good way to start prioritizing for things to focus on the future or to address what's next. So I know I've used this this kind of format multiple times at NIWC-LANT just to get feedback on a release or a process rollout. So next slide. And so this is an actual concept poster that my team developed because we're in the process of automating a lot of our internal command processes. So the one's coming out in, well, a month or two, and it's to automate our awards process. So we developed this concept poster, and we have a concept poster for each one of the applications that we're working on, processes we're automating. And it's really to communicate what's going to happen in the tool, what's coming up. You can see it kind of plans out the high-level functionality, it gives some benefits of the tool, and then even kind of goes into what's planned for the future, and kind of gives you an idea of who some of the tool users would be. So we've used it as a way to communicate what's coming up, a way for folks to look at it, ask questions, provide feedback, which it very well did. I mean, we got a lot of feedback about this and people wanting to get engaged from just seeing the concept poster. And it could lead to other ideas or other undiscovered impacts that we might not have been aware of just by having this one slider, concept poster for what was coming up. So it was a good way for us to generate interest and insight into what we had planned going forward. So that's just another example that we have used. And then I have one more to kind of walk through. Next slide. And this was another one. We actually went into the building a couple months ago and did this one face to face. So I didn't really get a chance to capture photos and slap in here, but I did my best rendition in Post-it note format on the slide for you. So really we were planning to build out the roadmap for FY22 and beyond for a specific functional team in our command information office. So really the first step was generating the ideas, all the things we knew we had planned or that we know needed to be done, right? And then we had discussions as we worked through it and discovered more that needed to be added. And then the next thing we did was we did what's on your radar activity, as you can see with the bullseye. And this is really to illustrate priorities. So not everything can be a priority. I know it usually seems that way, but we can't do all the things at once. So this really helps neck down what are those primary priorities in that bullseye. Because as you can see, you can only have one or two in there. It's designed that way. You can't fit everything into the bullseye. So we did that, and then it expands out, priority going from super priority to less important, but still important. Everything is still important, but less important going out. So you can have more of those outer rings. And it really started some of those discussions around some of those items that were super priority. Maybe they had a dependency that was kind of like a lower priority, but it was still, there was that discussion and the Post-it notes kept getting rearranged on that ring. And that bullseye. So then the next step was to take that and lay it out in a roadmap, really so that we could communicate out to our users, here's what we're working on, here's where we need your involvement, right? You see these things. If something interests you, please let us know so we can get you involved in some of those discussions, right? But you can see that maybe not all the priorities lined out where, the first two were, first and second on the roadmap, but then some of the others shuffled because maybe they were technically a lower priority, but they needed to be done before something else, just from dependencies. So this is kind of where we're at to help us figure out everything that's going on, because there's a lot, prioritize it down, and then find a way to build a visual roadmap for folks so we can communicate, what's going on in that functional area. So the next slide. So that's kind of a high level of user-centered design, and then some of the methods that I know I've used personally, and there's a whole bazillion other methods out there. But the real key is why do we care? Why do we care about user-centered design? So on the next couple slides, we're going to talk about that. So some of the benefits. We want to design systems that meet our users' holistic needs, right? We want to meet their functional needs. So what do they need to do to get the job done? But then we also want to make it easy for them to do their job, right? We got to truly understand what they need. And then, of course, working hand in hand with them throughout that entire life cycle will help us meet that. So the ultimate goal, right, is design systems with functionality in mind and usability in mind, because we want to eliminate as many pain points and challenges as we can going forward, right? I know people have systems out there that are functionally great, but you look at them and you use them and you're kind of like, oh, this is so tedious and painful. Why do I have to click 4 times when I could really just click once? So just understanding things like that and understanding how people need to do their job so that we can give them the best solutions possible, whether it's internal to our command or even external and for the warfighter itself. So that's really the ultimate benefit, is really to kind of get and understand what they need the best way possible. So next slide. And here's some impacts for user-centered design, why it's important. Improved performance, you've reduced user errors because you've been working with your users all along. Maybe you understand that, okay, these fields now need validation because these types of errors are always happening downstream. Improved credibility, that users have a higher satisfaction rate because you've been working with them the whole time through the design process. They have trust in the system that it's going to work, it's going to meet their needs. Reduced resource burden, right? A lot of this is around redesign, rework. If we have what we need up front and we've been working with our users, then when we get to the end, we don't have a solution and that doesn't meet their needs, that we're going to have to go all the way back to the start and start back over. Also, some of the other ones that I didn't think about as much were reduced training, reduced support, because if we design the system that is intuitive, then we won't need as much training and documentation. It should just make sense. Users could go through it that way. So those are just a couple of the impacts that I found, and some of the benefits of user-centered design. So next slide. So this is really our user-centered design at NIWC-LANT. As Steve mentioned in the introduction, I put together a NICE project, so a workforce development NICE project to work on user design for this fiscal year and beyond, because we need to equip our engineers and scientists on these, to have these items in their toolbox so they can go out and do what they need and make the best solutions for their customers. So this is where we started with our workforce development NICE project. So next slide. So the original goal, the main goal, is develop those knowledge and skills so we can better deliver value to the end users. The first phase, which is the current fiscal year, FY21, is really an introductory training and trying to get people to leverage that knowledge on their projects. The out year, phase 2, we're looking at bringing training in-house and sourcing that because that's, cost effective, and then getting engaged further outside of our command so we can leverage lessons learned and the knowledge base at other commands and other agencies. So, one big happy knowledge sharing family. Next slide. So for our FY21 NICE project, we've looked at doing training to help learn and build our skill set. And one of the training offerings we did look at was Luma training. It was very highly recommended. I know there were some folks at LANT who had already taken it and they raved about that training. So we looked at that. And if you don't know, Luma has 36 user-centered design methods that you learn about, and they cover what they call looking, making, and understanding. So it's just different methods to have in your toolbox, because as I said, sometimes it's more of an art than a science trying to learn which methods you should pick to get the right result for a given situation. So in this case, there were 2 options we looked at for Luma. One was the practitioner of human-centered design. It was an in-person 16-hour course. And then we also looked at Luma Anywhere. It actually ended up going with Luma Anywhere because in the COVID times, it just seemed to make sense. It was a little more flexible. So we did our 3 modules there. We had one course that was a 12-person cohort that did all 3 of those modules. And we just had another cohort complete, and they just did the design thinking essentials. So you can kind of mix and match there. So that's one phase that we did. And next slide. So the next part was, as Steve mentioned, we did actually, I sat through and had a couple people sit through the Warfighter Center Design Thinking training class here that Naval, the Center for Adaptive Warfighting, offered. It was a great course. I learned new methods that I hadn't used before, and we worked through them. So it was really fascinating because it had service members and civilians from all over the world and all different commands. And there at the same time. I know my class had folks from all over the place. And then I found like, we worked through some methods, and one was climb the mountain, where you start with identifying your status quo and your pain points, and you kind of work your way up to that utopia vision that you want, and you figure out how you're going to get there. So I found that to be a fascinating method. So, and it was a great set of activities. I got to learn how to do, since my class was virtual, I got to learn a little bit about, doing these methods in a virtual setting, whereas most of the time in my past, it's always been in a conference room with a bunch of Post-it notes and a Sharpie. So I found this course to be great, and I highly recommend it for anybody who is available and can take that. So those were the two training classes that we looked at in FY21. So next slide. So where do we go from here at NIWC Atlantic for FY22? So as I said, we're kind of looking at insourcing some of that training. Is it possible to get Luma certified instructors at NIWC-LANT? So we have started down that process. We have started looking at their facilitator training, and then and we have one person complete that, and then looking at becoming certified instructors so that we can just have our own courses at NIWC-LANT and not have to send people out for external training. It's worked kind of well in other areas at our command. We've done this similar approach for our Agile training as well. I don't know, at this point, probably 6 years ago. And then we're also looking at engaging with the call and becoming facilitators in some of their training, their warfighter-centered design training, so that we can continue knowledge sharing and growing our skills as well. And then, of course, looking at engaging in the human-centered design community of practice and any others, so that we can make sure that we learn from others what works for them, what doesn't. Because, sometimes we have unique constraints, sometimes we don't. But then also share that knowledge out of what's worked well for us so that we can share those lessons learned. And then the main focus, right, is we've trained these folks here at NIWC-LANT this fiscal year. But now we want them to engage with our projects and learn and use that knowledge going forward, and kind of bring that back and share those lessons learned with the command itself. So part of it is kind of like, I showed you my concept poster that worked for us. Well, maybe some other folks could use that on their projects as well. And then we've started engaging with our NIWC Atlantic Agile and DevOps communities within the command. I've given a brief there. We have a couple other folks looking to do that too. So that's kind of where we're at NIWC Atlantic as far on our user-centered design journey. So next slide, I guess. So that's really all I had. Thanks for hanging in there. I know this was the last presentation of the day, and virtual no less. So if anybody has any questions?
Are there any questions? Mike Lavery's in the room. He's a smiling ear. There's Mike, ear to ear with the smiles about you mentioning the call.
Of course, it was awesome.
So I won't stand like that. You can see my bald spot. Wow. So we've got Mike in the room, and Holly. I just want to like really drive this home. I was never a big fan of the human-centered design because they do silly things. However, the ultimate goal is that you do get to the crux of what your challenges are that Holly has talked about. So I'm sorry, I'll try to stay in frame. Sorry, Lane. One of the things that we're doing here that we have to recognize is that it's not only Holly at a warfare center. PEO MLB, which is here today, Noelle Schott, she's outside, they are also doing an innovation support services team that will have a warfighter a workforce development team or workforce agility, which will include human-centered design. This is not going away. This helps our people think better. Holly mentioned the mountain, and Mike, I don't know what it's called. It's like climb the mountain, the summit. I really like that one. Like that one really gets to the crux of what you want to be able to do, what utopia is, that kind of a thing. The way we get there, it's such a silly method, but I'm telling you, once you're there, it makes such for the easiest way to really understand as a group what you want to do, and you have good focus and good direction of where you want to go. So Holly, they've used it. They're using this in Charleston for some of the internal projects, right?
Yes, sir.
To sort of like an experimental thing before we start engaging with me, like the old time IPT leaders that want to maybe move things in a different direction. We had this great panel here today. So those are the folks that we support as integrated product team leaders. Is that looks to be the plan, is that we want to do it internal, make some mistakes, fall forward, and then expose it to the greater groups out there. Is that true?
So we have started internal, and part of that is just because I worked in the command information office, so it was really easy for me to leverage those methods going forward on our internal stuff. But as we have our training, we have reached out to IPTs and different competencies to get folks in there to get trained, so they can start leveraging it on their projects as well. Because we're learning from what we know as internal stuff, but as far as external projects out of NIWC Atlantic, we're hoping that everybody else will start utilizing these methods as well.
And Holly, at NIWC Atlantic, PEOMLB, which is the Program Executive Office for Manpower, Logistics, and Business Solutions, they use NIWC Atlantic and NIWC PAC, the information commands. And so they have a team that's looking at this. They fund us, the Warfare Center at NIWC Atlantic and PAC. So they will be interested in how we work back and forth. The Warfare Center and the project sponsor now will be on the same page using some of the same methods and technologies to tease out better requirements so we can create better requests for proposals from industry, academia, or whomever. So it's a great ecology that we're creating using these new methods that we're, again, they're so silly, Mike, the build up to them. But I do enjoy them so much. Once we get past that, they really make a difference in the work in the battle space, we can say. So Holly, I'll turn it back to you for if there's any questions. Anybody any baked questions in their head they want to ask Holly? Because it's super hot here, so everybody's like waiting to get to the beer, possibly. I'm not sure, but we do have some refreshments of soda and water in the evening. We're still on Zoom. So Holly, anything that you'd like to close with, please?
No, I know sometimes it does seem silly to do these little exercises and get in small groups and do your Post-it notes and all that. But I have found that is a good way to get people to focus and get to the crux of the problem so you can make a better solution going forward. And that is all I have.
Holly, thank you so much. Thank you, please.
Thank you.
Holly, thank you so much for presenting. Well, this is the last of what we have for today. I won't walk too far. So again, like all this technology, we've got the virtual, we've got the mics running through the soundboards to get the sound into the internet, and it was a whole week. I think they spent about 48 hours straight trying to get that linked up. Now, we don't hire, again, these are rotationals. There's no one here that's a professional photographer, professional AV person. They're all rotationals from Naval X that have done this. So again, I just, to me, it seems, now I'm part of that team too, but I didn't do much except move tables around. That's about all I can do. But from the team that came in here and did it, again, they're not professionals. They're doing this just based on the need to put something like this on. It's not sexy like you've seen, like Hack the Machine or other conferences that put it on. This is all just put on by regular engineers from warfare centers and from across the RDA. So I think this is super impressive. Virtual meetings, sound on both sides. We've had flip-flopping of back and forth in stages. Great, look at this. I mean, look at these badges. You got the schedule on the back. I mean, this is like a professional event that you might see down in Charleston at the CDCA. So again, I just maybe a round of applause for all the folks that put this together. Well, thank you, and I'm gonna I get to sign out because I have like 2 seconds left. Thank you, and we are starting up tomorrow at 09. Is that right, Ling? 09 tomorrow. Be here or be square. All right. Thanks, everybody.